I decided to switch the music up on you guys, see if you're paying attention.
I
Felt
caught
like I
it.
was back at the club.
Oot, oot. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Mark Sargent.
Hi.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you guys for having me. And by the way, the question you were asking me just before we came on air, am I a cheesehead? No, but I have a special relationship with that state. One, my family's from there, from Cochrane, Wisconsin. And I dated a girl from Milwaukee for like 5 years, and I was a huge fan of Brett Favre, believe it or not,
Okay,
for
yeah,
a number of years,
yeah,
mostly because of John Madden's love affair with him. Love the fact that John Madden, they made jokes about him all the time, and John Madden's like, "Oh, Brett Favre, because he could walk on water," and
right. He was good.
he was good. He was a
Yeah.
gunslinger. I love the fact. I'll give you a quick athletic story where when he left Green Bay, I don't blame him. Look, everyone knew Aaron Rodgers was going to be good, right? And Brett wasn't leaving, and so they threw him out. But in this contract, they said you can't play for anyone in our league for at least a year for
Hmm.
obvious reasons because you're going to come back and you're going to want some revenge, right?
Right.
And so he went to New York for a year, and they came straight back to Minnesota, and he lit the Packers freaking up.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
lit them up.
Right.
I
He
love
got
that.
that revenge.
He did, and it was sweet. And again, it shows you what athletes can do when they're really motivated. It's like I'm no, oh no, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, not just athletes, but champions.
Yes,
There's a
champions.
difference.
Yeah. So when anyone says, "Oh, who's the best quarterback in football?" I don't immediately jump on Tom Brady because of all the Super Bowl wins. I just don't.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, look, I
It's
saw
just a
his
different game too. It's just
Yeah,
so different. They don't get hit. They don't.
exactly. He got lucky because he got to extend his career because they realized that quarterbacks, really good quarterbacks, like directors in Hollywood, really good quarterbacks are so rare that they are a really expensive commodity. You cannot replace them. It's like a freaking engine in your car. And you're paying these guys $100 million contracts, and you can't get them hurt. Therefore, you have to
Yeah.
change the rules. You can't have them going down. Not when you
Yeah.
got some 330-pound bruisers coming after him every single
Right.
play.
Yeah. And that's
They,
why they pass the hell out of the ball now because they can. They can
yeah,
just sit back there and take all day.
yeah,
And if someone gets too close to them, they get a flag.
yeah,
So
yeah. So when he when he left the Patriots and then went to Green Bay or went to Tampa Bay, and people said he went to Tampa Bay just because the initials were his initials, I was going, oh God, that can't be true.
no.
And then wins a title. I'm going, okay. I mean, let's put it this way: when it comes to football, watch Any Given Sunday, directed by Oliver Stone. It'll give you some insights. As Mark Twain would say, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. When money gets up to a certain level, there's always going to be some theater. The best teams don't always win. It's the teams that the people want to see win. They win.
Cor- Correct. And also he picked that. He didn't want to be in the AFC because it was going to be stronger.
Yeah.
He pretty much hand selected that. Like they had
Yeah.
up and coming, they had a great defense, great receivers.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So
And
if you're going to play in the last few years, go there and it worked out.
yeah, now they can't keep him. I mean, Hollywood would love to make him an actor, and he really can't act. So, but he's in the tabloids all the time now, still.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, he's the guy. Yeah,
And
any
you
chance.
remember he didn't want to be the guy. He was like, remember Peyton Manning was the first guy that really got big, and then Tom Brady. They asked him, and he's like, "No, I don't want to be that guy. I just want to be the
Yeah.
quarterback." And then I think his agent got a hold of him and said, "Hey, man, you can turn this into something," and that's what he did. Then next thing you know, it was just everywhere.
Don't get me started on Peyton Manning because I was in Denver when he came there, and who he replaced when he came there,
Right?
which was Tim Tebow,
Yeah.
and that goes into a whole nother thing we can spend some time on.
Not a
Anyways,
Florida fan.
the what?
Not a Florida Gators fan.
No,
Oh,
no,
God,
no.
no.
Actually, no. I am a Tim Tebow fan because he was playing at a level which tapped into the superstitions of a lot of people. And the league had to get rid of him. I mean, he's the only quarterback in history to win a playoff game, and then the very next season he didn't have a job.
Right. Yeah.
To where and the reason a lot of people didn't know this. Like that was Cam Newton's rookie season. I'm sure he broke a whole bunch of records. Tom Brady broke a bunch of records. Aaron Rodgers broke a bunch of records that season. Nobody cared. All anyone cared about was, did Tim Tebow pull out some sort of fourth quarter win?
Yeah.
And as you know, he was the number one selling jersey. And look, if I was running the league, it's like, yeah, so there's 32 teams in this league. And as much as we like this kid, we can't have him being elevated to the state, of, where he can start resurrecting people.
Yeah, and do you think some of that had to do with his religion? He was pretty religious.
Part of it, yes, but most of it was money. And Peyton Manning, the rumor was that when he came to Denver, he's like, yeah, he will not be my backup quarterback. I do not want to hear them chanting his name on the sidelines if I have a bad game. I don't want to hear that crap. And it's like, nope. And again, the proof was this. Sorry, I don't want to drag this out because I know this is not a sports show.
This is a football podcast.
Yeah,
now.
It's a football podcast.
It's the Flat Earth Football Podcast.
What got me is that when he was let go from Denver, nobody would pick him up, right? And Florida, Jacksonville, what are you kidding me? He would sell out any team in Florida. And he had several to choose from. He could have gone to any team in Florida and just lit it up. And the NFL's like, nope. I mean, can you imagine what awkward phone calls the Goodell calling the heads of those 3 or 4 teams down there and saying, yeah, so I know you want to, you're not.
Right.
Anyway,
well, you know what's interesting about Peyton Manning is my Chiefs wanted him. They offered him the spot, and he didn't think they'd be good enough. So he turned them down and went to Denver because he thought they had a better chance. Obviously, they did, but we don't regret it because we got Mahomes and
and Peyton got out at the right time. If you believe in conspiracies, that whole Brady Peyton. Who knew that those were the guys that controlled the inflation level of the footballs for the league? They were the ones that wrote the policies. The quarterbacks really, and when Peyton Manning retires before the investigation starts. It's like, okay, we're not going to worry about him anymore. And then Tom Brady's attorney says, yeah, erase your phone right now. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Erase your freaking phone. Just torch it. And he did. And that was it. And then the deflate gate was over. Just like that.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who don't know, Mark Sargent is a professional football analyst. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I haven't been following.
I love it.
I'm sorry. Yes,
Dude.
Sorry. I am into flat Earth. It just happened to be that one of our hosts here was wearing a Kansas City Chiefs hat, and I had to make a comment. And
the Chiefs play on flat football field on flat Earth.
Yes, they do, which is also a great kind of like a basketball court. The football fields are flat, and you can test this yourself if you have a football.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, well, it's not. No, it's just you put a camera in one end zone, put it on the ground, and then you walk to the other end zone, and you watch the footage after you get it back, and you see what happens. You start to set over that field. You start disappearing from the ground, from the feet up, and it's like, why does that happen? It's like, well, it's not because of the curvature of the Earth. Let's put it that way. So
before we dive too deep,
has a slope, right? It kind of goes up in the middle and it kind of slopes off to the side.
Well, there's some drainage stuff, sure, but anyway.
Before we go too deep,
yes.
I think we've covered the fact that you. I like to call you the flat Earth theorist.
Yes. Yes.
I've interviewed you before, and just for the listeners, I just want to say out front, and I think this is important to say that. I don't believe that the Earth is flat. However, every time we have talked, I have really enjoyed our conversations. There will be no disrespect from commenter, or well, if they do, if it's funny, maybe we'll accept it. But my point is that with that being said, my major question for you is. Is there any subject that you don't have such a working knowledge on? I mean, it's like everything we bring up, man, you just bam, 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 everything.
I know a little about a lot. There are some things like when you just said that, I'd be like, well, I don't know much about fashion, but
clearly.
For various reasons. But at the same time, I remember little aesthetic things. So I could throw out some little aesthetic little things about fashion. Now, that being said, we're watching like The Devil Wears Prada. there was a lot that went over my head, but I kind of got the gist of it. No, okay. Because I never got married or had kids.
Lucky.
Getting started. By the way, you want to watch an interesting interview? There's a channel by a photographer called the Soft White Underbelly. Listen to the hour interview that he did of a divorce lawyer of 20 years.
That's my OnlyFans page title.
What, the Soft White Underbelly?
Good one.
It's fascinating. Because I never got married or had kids, I have an opinion. I got to spend a lot of time on the internet, and I went down a lot of rabbit holes. So there's some things I'm pretty good at. I mean, I have an opinion on just about every conspiracy you could think of, media sanctioned or not. And by that I mean, there are obviously conspiracies that happen in the mainstream world, but they're not called conspiracies. They're either called scandals, or if somebody dies, they're called tragedies. Where three or more people are involved. But I mean, come on, the legal world convicts people of conspiracy all the time, and which was really interesting to me when all of a sudden the word conspiracy turned into this fringe thing, into the whole truther community. And what I mean by that is this, because I have personal knowledge of this. If you rob a bank, you are convicted of armed robbery, right? But you and two of your friends rob a bank, you're convicted twice. You're convicted once for robbing a bank, and second time for conspiracy. You conspired with other people to rob the bank. It's a completely separate charge. It's like, oh no, you're going to get extra time because you thought it out so much. You brought other people in, and we're going to hit them too. And
thank you, CIA, for ruining that, for putting
Yeah, so the CIA came out and said, oh, the conspiracy now is this fringe word. And the mainstream media they are not allowed to use that word. They're allowed to use the word scandal, like Enron, right? Remember when Enron found a loophole in the whole tax system and cheated everybody out? Of course, it also helped that they spent $1 million a day to bribe one of the biggest accounting firms in the world, and they took the money because, well, it's $1 million a day. Why not? But that's a scandal, right? But anything we'll just throw in like the Vegas shooting is considered a tragedy, right? Or JFK is considered a tragedy and stuff like that because somebody died. Anything other than those two things, again, if the media doesn't put their stamp on it, it's considered a conspiracy. So, sorry. Long story short, yeah, I know a lot about a bunch of stuff because
long story short, the media sucks.
Media sucks.
Media sucks.
And if you stare at computers long enough, you pick up a few things. So
you're talking about the two convictions for conspiring.
Yeah.
What do you think about right now? We got the whole the guy with the Capitol riots got 22 years. I think, remember the Proud? Was it?
Yeah, boy, that was the whole insurrection thing, which you're supposed to be careful about if you're talking online about.
Okay.
This.
Well, I'm on about 1,000 watch lists as it is. What's one more?
I'll be delicate, but everybody knows what we're talking about here. For me, that was a wonderfully set up operation in terms that it got a whole bunch of people to show up with so many cameras around DC, and they got to tag everybody. It's like they knew who was there, right? Not only that, by the way, don't think, well, some people weren't on camera. It's like, no, but everybody brought their phones. They knew where you were. They knew everybody that was in that audience, and then they singled out people to go after. And then, as far as the one girl, dying supposedly from the single shot from the security guy, there's some wonderful breakdowns. I know you probably may or may not have seen them. If you don't, I'll send it to you after the fact, which was brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And I'm a big believer in stats. I love statistics. I love, how the numbers work out. And it's like, you're telling me in a room which was only guys, this tiny little girl, right, with the backpack, punched through, and she's the first over the barricade, and she's the only one over the barricade, and a single shot, a fatal shot. And I was like, Lone Gunman to me is one of the oldest stories in the book. It is, it's absolutely brilliant, and it has worked for years and years and years. And I mean, going before JFK, but it's an easy thing because it's a nice, tidy way of getting rid of things. And I forgot, it's been a while since we've talked, so I don't know what I mean, yeah, you may not, believe in the whole flat Earth enclosed world thing, but I'm sure because of what you guys do, I mean, you believe in certain that not everything that the media says is face value absolutely true.
I'll put it to you this way. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say, like, I just think it's important to keep a realm of skepticism. Like you have to question things, and I especially think today with everything we see that you really can't rule anything out at this point.
No, and don't forget the people that, I love it when people say, well, there's no such thing as fake news. And I go, okay, really? Resolve these two sentences. Ready? Everything on CNN is absolutely true. And everything on Fox News is absolutely true. That's tough because both sides absolutely accuse each other of blatant lies.
Opposition.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that I believe, because there's obviously things out there that, I'm glad there's people like you that have your beliefs, and then I'm glad there's people that have different beliefs than me, and that's what makes it interesting. But I don't think you can really rule anything out. I mean,
no,
you just can't, and it's good to hear other sides, and then weigh them out and think them out, and then form your own opinions, and that's the way it should be.
How many times have you looked at something? I mean, we've all done it, where you look at something, it's like, well, it can't be that, because that true, if it's true, that's wild. And I've run into that many, many times where, the truth is often, stranger than fiction. The really weird stuff that's out there blows the movies away. And a lot of times they can't even make movies about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I tell you, I spent over 3 decades in the military.
Yeah.
And with that being said, the government, I trust this table that I'm sitting in front of more than I trust the government. The crap that I've seen in that time. And I tell you what, you'll be surprised that I've kind of changed my views a little bit since the last time we talked, with regard specifically to the moon landing.
Oh, good. I believe India landed on it.
Yeah, right. Well, everything I've seen, because I like to keep an open mind. I'm going to tell you that I believe we went, but all the pictures and the video that's been published and put out there, I don't believe that was from the actual moon.
It's questionable.
Itself.
There you go. At the very least, you could say that. I mean, there's two quick examples I want to give. One would be the heavy metal band Rammstein, or Rammstein, or however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
They nine. They did
That's correct.
They did a video called "We're All Living in America," which was a nice little nod to how the American media machine is everywhere. Rome sent troops everywhere. We just send our shows everywhere. And people recognize our stuff based on, I mean, come on, Ronald McDonald's is recognized more than Christ in a lot of cases, right? And so, but while they were doing it, they recreated for the video, the main set was the band members in astronaut suits playing on the moon. And they recreated the Apollo color palette absolutely flawlessly. And all they did was went to an abandoned factory, visqueened all the light sources, put in 4 inches of ash, did a recreation of the lander, and then actually hired the clothing company that made the outer skin for the NASA suits. And they were playing, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, wow, that is so close. And I knew they were nodding. They knew full well what they were doing. Whereas it's like, oh yeah, it's all just a fun and games video, but look what we can do, right? For a budget of what, a couple $100,000 or $300,000 for a video, and NASA gets what is it, over 70 something $million a day, which leads me to my other thing real quick, which is India, right? So India, if you guys missed it, anyone's listening, supposedly landed a probe on the moon, right? The Russians were there like 3 days before, supposedly tanked theirs, crashed theirs. So there's no footage of whatsoever, which is like, okay, so that's totally credible. You've got no footage of US. Oh yeah, we crashed probe on moon. It's like, really? Got anything to back that up? No. Well, okay, fine. We'll take your word for it. But India lands one. That's not the part that insulted me. And the graphics were straight out of 1996, that they were using, just to show the simulation part. And they took like 5-6 still shots, and then they shut it down just yesterday, by the way. They just turned it off. They said, oh, well, it's done. In 2 weeks, we put it to sleep. And it's like, what do you mean to put it to sleep? It's a solar powered probe. What do you mean? 2 weeks and that's it? Just an even 2 weeks and you just turned it off? Oh, that's convenient. No, that the part that insulted me was they said, oh yeah, and we did it for $75 million. And it's like, and people don't understand military spending, which is $75 million. That's nothing, right? It's like you might as well just said 50. There's no credibility in saying that you did a space program for $75 million. A single F-16 fighter without missiles is $63 million, right?
Well, we just
For
gave
what it's worth.
$75 million to Ukraine while you were talking about this.
Exactly. A super yacht. You walk into a super yacht dealership and you give them $75 million, they'll just kick you out of the store. It's like, no,
Right.
minimum $200 million. You couldn't buy out LeBron's contract, the rest of his contract for $75
No
million.
way. Yeah.
For what it's worth, they got a couple of nice toilet seats and a hammer.
It was just ridiculous. So anyway, I'm glad that you question the validity of the American
More and more every day.
Yeah, it's
More and more every
not
day.
good. Anyone that wants to look at it, I won't go after all the points, but the one you really should look at because it's out there. You can find it in 2 seconds, which is, and again, people forget their physics when they're going through high school, which is the shadows are intersecting. There's one light source on the moon. If you're on the moon, it's the sun. It's 93 million miles away. All the shadows should run absolutely parallel. They should never intersect. And all the shadows look like they've got studio lighting behind it, which is what you would do, right? You hire some studio lighting people, and of course they don't know physics. It's like, we really need this ship to be lit in a certain way. Can you get the floods over here, right? And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, the shadows are going in different directions. It's like, no.
What's the thing with the crosshairs on the camera? Like they're in now.
Yeah, that was a little thing that most people don't get because now we don't have those anymore, which was the old film photography thing, really old back in the day. You had the markers on the lens. So you had the crosshairs on the lens, so every photo would have these crosshair marking points on them. And I don't know why they had them, maybe for reference points. But when they touched up the photos, they went over the crosshairs in some cases.
They forgot that, right?
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and then even the flag, right? Because the flag is kind of straight, like.
Oh, dude. Or the fact that the spacesuit defies the one of the biggest laws of physics, which says that pressure cannot exist next to non-pressure without some sort of barrier, and it's got to be a rigid barrier. We'll go to YouTube and say anything in a vacuum chamber, just fill in the blank. Soda can, Stretch Armstrong, a volleyball, a football, whatever. They all just expand until they detonate, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that Boyle's law?
Is it Boyle's law?
I think it is. I don't know.
It might be. I mean, it is one of the laws of thermodynamics, though, which is you can't have a vacuum next to a non-vacuum. And any submarine guy will tell you this. The force of a vacuum or non-pressure is no joke. Which again, Hollywood completely conditioned us that it doesn't even exist, which is you get a hole in your spacecraft, right? Micrometeor. It's like, oh, you hear this psst. It's like, oh, we only got 3 minutes of air left. Somebody get a cork or some duct tape or something, right? No, any submarine guy or any deep sea oil rig guy will tell you, it's like, no, that hole's there. It's over. You're done in a fraction of a second. All the air in the room, the air in your lungs, you're probably going to get pinned to the wall or sucked out of the wall. There's horrible accidents, and it happens in a fraction of a second. It's extremely violent. But Hollywood doesn't like that as the narrative. Hence Mark Twain's wonderful quote, which I love so much, which is never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
I don't expect you to remember this, but I was a submariner. And
oh, cool!
I tell you what, I used to pull a vacuum on that sub every time we pulled into that Liberty port with how fast my ass was out that hatch. Let me tell you, gone, son, gone.
It is. Well, the point people say, why do you care about the vacuum so much? Because if you believe in the vacuum of space, and our atmosphere is sitting right next to it. I've asked astrophysicists point blank, young ones too. Right, not the ones that are trying, not the cagey veterans that are trying to pull one over. I go, what happens at the edge of space? Where there's an atmosphere and then a vacuum. What happens? It's like, well, it's just not really doing much. It's not affecting much, right? It's just little particles. It's like barely touching. It's like a vacuum doesn't care. A vacuum's going after everything that's pressurized. And the argument I threw at people, I'll use an Amazon reference for you. You take an Amazon box. I'm not sponsored by Amazon. But you take an Amazon box and you put some packing popcorn in the bottom of it. Make sure the little piece of tape holding it, right? You pick up the box, fine. Packing popcorn doesn't go through the bottom of the box. Put the box down, put a whole bunch of books on top of the packing popcorn. What do you think happens when you pick up that box? Just goes, this punches right through. That's what should be happening at the edge of space. The vacuum should just rip off everything, going all the way down to the oceans and then take the oceans too. And it should be doing it instantly, and it doesn't. And everybody said the only argument that people throw at me, and they say, well, it's because of gravity. I go, really? Gravity? Gravity's... And I go, okay, so bear with me. If you had a second floor of your building and you turned it into a small vacuum chamber and you popped that valve, which was right above you, what's going to happen? The air is going to rush upstairs. I go, you mean that gravity? The gravity that couldn't keep the air in your room from going upstairs. But this very same gravity that's outside is going to keep everything hugged to this ball against the greatest vacuum ever.
Well, gravity's still a theory.
It is. It is.
So,
and it's a very, again, it's a really convincing theory because things work. Meaning, I take this phone, right? I drop it. It falls. It's going to fall every single time. A million times I could drop it. A million times it's going to fall. However, it cannot be replicated in a lab. We don't have a way of creating anti-gravity, which you see in science fiction shows all the time.
But wait, there's more. Sorry,
yes.
I just I'm getting ready to segue into what I really want to get into.
Oh, okay,
go ahead, please.
I was going to say, nor can we create extra gravity or anything like that. Every scientist that's worth his salt, that's an old Roman reference, by the way. Every scientist that's worth his salt will tell you, it's like, we don't know what gravity is. We can only tell you what it does. We can only tell you its symptoms. And my argument is, it's like, yeah, they say that gravity is a magical molecular force that pulls things down to the center of a ball. I say, oh, fine. Gravity is a magical molecular force that pulls down things just straight down on a flat Earth. For me, it's no different. And then you throw in density, but it's a whole other thing. Sorry, where'd you want to get to?
Well, with the recent in the news with the whole UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts on that? Now, here, Ryan and I have a little bet going on. I had a guess on what you're going to say, but
okay.
And I'm probably way off base, but anyway.
They're obviously all Chinese. No, that is not my answer.
Weather balloons.
They're obviously all. No, that's an article, by the way, that came out recently, which is somebody is actually trying. It's getting no traction. It says all UFOs are probably Chinese. It's like, dude, Roswell? Really? You're gonna explain Roswell when China was basically riding bicycles? Come on.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously, they had no industry in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, for me, UFOs are. Do I think they're real? First off, yes, I do. Because way before I got into flat Earth, I was doing a lot of I watched a thing and somebody said, oh, hey, you want to see some UFOs? Grab some night vision binoculars. Kind of like the heads up displays for Army. Only they're 5 power or 10 power or whatever. It doesn't have to be Gen 2 or Gen 3. Anyway, I start watching the sky, and it's like, wow, the sky is just freaking crawling with things. And they are absolutely not satellites. I've seen them do amazing gymnastics up there. And it's like, what? And no one can see them because they don't make any noise. They're running off a unified field engine, and they don't have their lights on, which, by the way, I love. And I think Steven Spielberg knows this too, which is it's one of those little things that people just miss. It's like, by the way, UFOs are like cars. They run just fine with their headlights off. Get it? So if they have a completely silent engine, they don't even have to cloak at night. And that's the point. It's like, oh yeah, they can run around all day because we only look up when we hear something, when we hear one of our really noisy airplanes. So do I think they are from Mars and Jupiter and Venus and stuff like that? No, I don't. For obvious reasons, because I think Mars and Jupiter and Venus are just lights on top of a planetarium ceiling. But I think they're just older versions of us. Meaning, you remember, our own unbroken history only goes back, say, 5,000 years. So all those older civilizations, and if you want to quote ancient aliens, you can. I mean, the sunken cities off of Japan, the sunken cities off of India, which we don't know how old they are. The Bosnian pyramids, the real pyramids, Puma Punku, Machu Picchu, Bimini Road. Just take your pick. There's so many out there. It's like, okay, these older civilizations, I think that they're just previous older versions of us who's flying around there. I think there are rules that once civilization reaches a certain point, they have to move on. No different than a senior class, right? What happens to us after 5,000 years? Come on, we're running the end. We're running on fumes right now. Everybody knows the narrative is changing, and we're reaching a stage now. It's like everything looks like it's gonna, slowly, and then all at once. That whole thing. So, but that's who I think they are, and I think there's rules that they have to follow. You want to look up the greatest UFO. I don't know if I mentioned this the last time I was talking to you. The greatest UFO sighting in history is not Roswell. It's not 1899 Aurora, Texas. It's not 1930s Germany. It is
1500s.
1561 Nuremberg, Germany. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I remember you bringing that up last time.
Again, it's got its own wiki page. It was drawn because there was no photography back then, and it raised so many questions. Even Ancient Aliens brought it up, but they left out the third faction that showed up, the giant black angular craft that chased off the other two, because obviously the other two were doing something above Nuremberg that they weren't supposed to be doing. It's like, what sort of hierarchy are we looking at here? And so I think there's a prime directive that's involved.
So where do you think they come from?
You mean where do they live when they're not?
Yeah, I mean,
when they're not bothering us,
right?
When they're not picking up campers and rowboaters and drunk guys, in the middle of nowhere.
And most importantly, where can I get probed? I mean, never mind.
Well, that's
you got that in the Navy, buddy.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
If you want, as far as how many different factions there are, I don't know. But do I think I think most of them, I mean, you could go one of two ways. Well, one of three ways. Either they're living outside of the dome, if it's a flat world, or even a globe, they're living outside of here, which I doubt, because I think it'd probably be more fun to have them in. They're probably subterranean. Just about every story I've ever heard of them landing, or people, it's like, okay, where is this thing going? It's either going into a cave, it's going into the water, it's going into a section of the woods, and it doesn't come out, but it's landing somewhere. And it's like, well, it's obvious we don't have hidden cities. It's not like, what was that Black Panther? It's not Wakanda. Let's put it that way. I don't think they have cloaked cities lying around. But do I think they're subterranean? Sure, why not? It doesn't take much. Think about how little real estate we actually need to survive. Most of our civilization lives between sea level and 1 mile up. Right. So if you even had a cave that was, I don't know, 200 miles wide and 50 miles high, that's way more room. I mean, that's way higher than our commercial airliners. We could live in a cave like that, which would, then begs the question. It's like, oh wait, why aren't we living in a subterranean system? We don't know. So but they could be interdimensional. Like that whole Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull thing.
The good one.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I didn't watch the last one, and I'm not going to.
No, me neither, man. They
did
enough damage in the. I didn't think that the Crystal Kingdom, whatever the hell it was that bad. But
I didn't think it was that bad either. But the purists sure hated it. Woo. Did they?
Yeah, and I'm a big. It's one of my favorites. But anything with Indiana Jones except for this new one when he's like 95 years old.
Yeah.
I'll check it out, but I don't want to see like my hero.
I mean, there was a moment where I thought it was excessive. It's like, okay, so you survived the atomic blast by hiding in a refrigerator and getting tossed and suffered no blunt force trauma whatsoever.
He was fine.
It could happen.
By the way, I think he was like 70 then.
Yeah, the man would have been in a coma.
80
once he came out of that. So, anyways, I hope that answers the question. I think the bigger point there is I think they're us. I think they're just because think of this. Think of how little it takes to turn a civilization to elevate them to a status that's unbelievable for the natives, right? And we're not talking about, like when we showed up on the shores of North America or, Aborigine tribes deal with. Just think of us, like, for example, let's say there was some worldwide disaster, right? And, they locked down Cheyenne Mountain and Dulce, New Mexico, and some of the underground bases. Within not even 2 generations, right? 20 years, 40 years, you've pretty much lost all modern education. You've probably lost a lot of language, refined language. You've definitely lost all the technology. And you would have kids after that point. Oh, so let's say after 40 years, hey, crank up some Blackhawks and start sending them out, across the land, see what's happening. There'd be kids looking at these things like they were absolutely alien compared to what they were used to. And that's our own technology to our own people. So, if you even have a couple hundred years between civilizations, and those civilizations all they need is an access to a tech that we don't have, or we're not willing to give to the general public. Like, I firmly believe we have access in some limited fashion to a unified field engine, which is known as the UFO engine, right? Mm-hmm. An engine that can propel a craft in any direction at just about any acceleration and velocity, right? Yeah. But you can't. But because our civilization was built off of a petroleum empire and the internal combustion engine, we can't, even if we wanted to. Which is why the X-Files was kind of right. I mean, I know they kind of glorify.
Man, I love that show.
Right? Yeah, you can't do like a water-based engine, but you definitely can't do a unified based engine, because that would make everything else obsolete. I mean, think about it. The entire auto industry, the truck industry, shipping, trains, all that stuff. It's like
too much money gone too, right?
Oh, yeah, it would be
basically reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, there would be huge. Well, I mean, come on, it is absolutely not a stretch. I remember that one X-Files pretty well, where a guy created an engine that ran on water, right? Mm-hmm. How long would it be before the oil and gas industry came to him and offered him the carrot or the stick? And it's like, look, we'll give you $5 million, give us the blueprints, and we'll go away. Oh, you're going to say no? Yeah, lock the door. And that's it. That guy's gone.
Yeah,
right?
That probably would have happened first. They probably wouldn't have even bothered asking.
But it depends. I mean, they could have sized him up, and some people, if you get enough leverage, you can get them to shut up. Secrets, as you guys know, can be kept. It just depends on the motivation. The line.
Kennedy kept one, right? He kept
what?
Kennedy kept one pretty good.
Sure.
JFK.
Or I'll give you one. One of my favorite, because people say every once in a while ask me who my favorite president was, and I say, you know who it was? It was the last guy with power, which would have been Dwight Eisenhower, because he was was the Allied commander, and he still had a lot of pull. And there's this great story I heard from some military guy on his deathbed, and I love it because it rings. There's no plot holes in it. I absolutely love it. Which was while Eisenhower was in office, right before Kennedy, right? He had gotten the word that they were just finishing up the early stages of the Groom Lake facility, right, in Area 51, and he didn't know anything about it, right? So he makes a phone call. He makes some calls like, "Can you get me a hold of whoever's running Area 51?" Rah rah rah, and he goes, "Yeah, I'd like to come out and check the place out," right? Right, thinking he's still got clout because he was the guy, right? Mm-hmm. MacArthur and Patton and those guys, they answered to him, and they said, "Sorry, you don't have clearance. You're a civilian now." Because people forget the president sits way down the totem pole. He is just a talking head. He might as well just be Ron Burgundy in a better suit, right? And his response was, which I loved, it's like, "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to let me in there and give me a tour, or I'm going to call up some of my buddies." Oh, like this guy over here runs the First Army. And we're going to come in there and we're just going to take a tour on our own. How's that? Right? And they immediately is like, fine, freaking come out here. Right? So, and he wasn't bluffing. He was like, no. I'm the guy. Until I die, I am, he made president because he was, and which is, he didn't get his face on the money like Andrew Jackson or Grant or those guys, but everyone knew who he was. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the point is that he kept he never talked about it. Right.
So what you're saying then is you think he was the last inside guy, last honest guy.
Last honest guy. Kennedy, well, come on. And again, I've tried not to be mean about Kennedy, but I try to remind people that because people were enamored with him, right? It wasn't just him; it was also his wife.
His life, everything. I mean, he had that it factor. That
he did. He absolutely had that. No other president has ever been that guy.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? Since we're talking about it, is when I was a kid growing up, they loved him. The media loved him. Now you hear about Obama, and they've almost gotten away from Kennedy because, in a way, they'd never say it, but he's almost controversial in terms of how he, didn't want the FBI, didn't, he fought against so much stuff.
Yeah, he did.
And he doesn't seem to be their darling anymore.
No, he doesn't. And the Marilyn Monroe movie didn't do him any favors either. But
who's seen that movie? Nobody.
What, Marilyn Monroe movie?
Monroe.
It wasn't bad. I mean, if you're a Marilyn Monroe fan, you probably should watch it because it would explain a few things.
So she was killed, though, right? I mean, do you think she was killed?
Okay. Let me get to that part. So Kennedy, if think about this. Remember, he was assassinated in '63, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's like, why was he killed in '63? It's what do you think was coming up? And '64 was an election year, right? No one could beat him in '64. No
way.
Short of Jesus, no one was going to beat this guy. And I love the quote. Remember, he wasn't even supposed to be president in the first place. It was supposed to be a very young Dick Nixon, right? And the quote that I love from Kennedy's father, I think it was Joe Kennedy, not Joseph, but Joe or Joseph. I can't remember. The first son was named Joseph or Joe. I think it was Joseph. Anyway, the first son was supposed to be president, and Joe Kennedy said, "Well, you want to be president, you got to be a war hero." And it's like, that's what you got to do. So he became a pilot over in England. Yep. It's like, all right, you're up. next guy, next guy. And same thing, right? He was the whole PT 109, whether it was real or not. He rescued people, in the warboat, whatever. So he was supposed to be reelected in '64. That would have taken '64 to '68, right? And then Bobby comes in, right? Because remember, he was Attorney General. People loved Bobby too. And Bobby would have gone 68 to 72, and then 72 to 76. That is a simple no-brainer. Look, I'm talking from the black hat side of things, right? If I'm in an Illuminati meeting, it's like 16 years of these guys. Oh hell no!
Yeah, they're not having it. No way.
We're not doing that. That is a long-term problem. We're taking this thing now, absolutely now. Marilyn, and again, look what happened to Bobby, right? And that was the message they sent to Bobby, which was like, don't you even think about it. Don't you even think about it, right? So what does he do? Right? It's like, the crowd's getting into him. He's getting all pumped up. It's like, yeah, I'll run for president. Nope, gone. You're gone. But Marilyn, think about this. And this goes for every president in the modern age. If you are having an affair with the president in any capacity, you are being totally clocked that entire time. Your mail, your phone, they probably have people on your neighborhood. They know where you are. And if you even have an inkling, you say the wrong thing, right? I'm not picking on women, but women all of a sudden it's like, if Jack just starts treating me better, well, I'm going to take steps, right? If that conversation comes up, and I don't care who she's talking to, that's
like Goodfellas, right? Like Goodfellas.
Or not even Goodfellas. What was the line from Heat? Same, De Niro. If there's a doubt, there is no doubt.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's of course you're gonna do it. I mean, if you watch the movie, the Marilyn movie, you know full well it's like, oh yeah, she would have been that type. She would have said something on the phone, and somebody would have made a meeting. And it's like, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I read Marlon Brando's autobiography years ago, and he knew her well, and he talked to her that night, and he said she was happy, everything was good. He goes, "There's no way, man." He goes, "It was one of those Kennedys, man. Somebody had her wiped out, but she didn't. Yeah. She would have never done that herself."
No. And look, people in power, you think it's like the movies, and that they need really heavy, legitimate reasons. Sometimes it's petty. I still believe to this day, for example, that Diana. Remember Diana?
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing went down from a simple optics standpoint. All right, and this is going to sound petty, but bear with me for a second. Which is, remember, her sons were going to get married eventually, and that's a problem because it's going to be and those weddings were spectacular. I mean, the first wedding, the oldest son, that was a spectacular wedding. Well, you don't want that tarnished in any optic. Because Diana is going to show up at the wedding. Do you think anyone's going to care about anyone else if Diana's showing up at that wedding? Oh no! I mean, every camera is going to be like, they're going to be glued. It's like, because they're going to look for any facial expressions, like who's looking at her, is she glaring at somebody? That whole drama thing. It's like, how do you get rid of that? Well, it's easy. just get rid of that. You
get her in a tunnel.
You make sure you
get her in a tunnel on a dark night.
Yeah, she doesn't show up at the wedding. She was the story. There was wonderful documentaries about. She was so incredibly popular compared to everybody else. I mean,
it was absurd. It was insane. And then another one who was really popular almost at that same time was JFK's son.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was huge, and then he ends up going down in a plane accident.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he was murdered.
No. The curse, whether the curse is real or there are people in power, kind of like the X-Files, the wonderful X-Files line where they're sitting around a meeting with the lead smoking man. He goes, and I want to make sure. He goes, the Buffalo Bills are never winning the Super Bowl. Am I understood?
The cancer man. Yeah,
and it was like that was a great line, which is like, the Kennedys are doing nothing. He goes, and come on, the Teddy thing was even kind of a weird deal, which was like, all right, because Teddy, they would have gone for him, but that girlfriend drowning in the car and he got out.
He was drunk, right? Wasn't he?
He
was always drunk.
Or was
maybe that's why he drank so much.
Or was he even there? It doesn't even really matter though, because either way, he was discredited to the point. Chappaquiddick, if you guys want to look it up, if anyone's listening, I'm not going to spell it for you.
What was that? Chappaquiddick?
Yeah, Chappaquiddick was the I think the river or whatever that they went off into the drink. But at that point, he was going to be a senator. Of course, he had a huge amount of pull, but he was never ever going to be president. And then
he ran against Carter, right?
Yeah, but it was never going to happen. They knew that, and that was fine for them. They were like, no, but come on. By that point, you had total control. After Kennedy, I firmly believe that they were like, okay, we're not making mistakes when it comes to presidential elections. We are controlling the narrative here. We're not going to be blindsided. Oh, I'm sorry. That great line by Joe Kennedy, because Jack was asking somewhere along the rumor was, and it's a great line, where his JFK's father was constantly obsessing about the numbers of the election, and Jack goes, "Why do you care so much?" He goes, "Because I'm not paying for a landslide." And it's like, yeah, that's about right, because everyone thought that he did. He used his money connections and he snuck in that election at the last minute under the wire. Because in the 60s, how much could you really control an election? Now, of course, as you know, you can do everything you want.
No, I don't believe it.
I'll give you one more. I'll give you the Obama thing. Look this up if you get a chance.
That he's gay?
Who? Oh,
Obama.
That was an obvious one. Sorry. Anyone, we won't delve into it too much. Look up you won't find the video on YouTube. You'll have to go to like BitChute or Brighteon or something. Look up the Joan Rivers quote. You guys have seen that, right?
I think I've seen that. Yeah. What was it though?
Where she was going into her 30th facelift of the month. And, it's a routine. I mean, at that point, she goes to the doctor all the time. She was just getting this tighten. And that was the last time, by the way, anyone saw her, because she goes in and the TMZ's outside and they're asking her questions. It's like, hey, Joan, you got any funny things? She was talking about, they were talking about the elections or something like that. And he goes, when do you think we'll get our first gay president, right? And she stops, and without even blinking, she goes, well, Obama's already gay, right? She goes, we already have it with Obama. And then she goes, it's fine. Yeah. Just settle down, right? And then she starts walking up the stairs, and she could have pulled back. All she had to do was keep walking, but no, she had to turn around. And she turned around, and she said, and by the way, she goes, and Michelle's a tranny, right? And they're like, what? And they go, and the guy didn't understand. He goes, or no, she said trans. And of course, this was back when trans wasn't even a thing, right? In the news. And he goes, what do you mean? What's trans? He goes, transgender. It's like, everybody knows, it's fine. Don't worry about it, right? And she heads right back up the stairs, and that's it. She never turned it back into a joke. She never pulled back from it, and that was it. She died right then and there. She went to the operating table for a facelift.
So
she died after that.
Yeah, she died right then and there. She was dead 20 minutes later. And the reason again, speaking from I hung out with the smoking man from time to time. The reason why you would do that is because when she got out of there, if she got out of there, the media would be, you need the follow-up questions. Think about it.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah, what did you mean by that? That would be constantly. And
we already suspected that she was a man, but what did you mean by that?
I have a theory about that.
And you can't have that. You can't have her. I mean, come on, she's not subtle. So she was gonna slip.
She was gonna,
She's not subtle and she's not sober a lot. She's on pills or alcohol or both.
Well, she held up well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she, up until that moment.
So sorry.
My whole theory.
One more thing. I know you have questions, but hang on. Let me throw this one more thing about Obama, which I love. If you want to look up something, look up. So I don't know how many movies you follow. You remember the in Man of Steel, the new Superman movies? You remember the Black General?
Kind of.
Okay, so you can look him up. There's a picture of him out there. Just look up General in Man of Steel movies. That actor, character actor, been on quite a few things. Light black skin. He was interviewed at this radio station, and somebody was giving Obama all this credit, and he couldn't help himself. He just stopped. He goes, "Look," he goes, when you're listening to him, you're listening to me. I'm the guy that gave him most of his acting lessons. Right. And he was just going off about, he seemed kind of proud of the fact, only ticked off that no one was, he couldn't take credit for it. Right. Sort of like the whole Wag the Dog movie at the end where, the director wants to take credit and the CIA is like, no. So somebody, kind of like the follow-up question. Some people head down to the studio or whatever because they were listening and they're like, dude, what did you mean by that? Right. And he just immediately retracted. I'm sure somebody got a hold of him. Yep, there he is. Yeah, that guy.
Who is it?
Okay, that's the actor that played the general in the last Superman movies.
Right.
And he kind of and you can kind of pick that up when you're talking. The thing that people have to understand is they figured out that as the years went by, whoever's going to be president has to be good on camera. And every election we've had for a long time now, they have. They've gotten better and better and better on camera. Come on, look, Ronald Reagan was a freaking B movie actor, right? And he played the Gipper, for God's sakes. And then
Joe Biden could attest to that. I mean, I've never seen such charisma, and he's suave. He trips and stutters, and
well, there's that. But he was actually
they dropped the ball on that one.
No, there's a whole other thing to that, which I don't know if you want to get into. But before that,
I want to hear this.
Okay, but look at Trump. He was literally created as a reality star out of nothing. There's a wonderful show, documentary where the producers of that show found him. He was just doing nothing in an aging office in New York. And, his glory days were long behind him. It's like, yeah, we got this idea for a show. I think it might actually catch on. And of course, you don't know what the general public's going to resonate with. And he was, which always surprised me, that Blue Team never tried to fight fire with fire. Meaning, so you've got a reality television guy, a non-politician, as president of the United States, right? And you're not going to counter that with because most of Hollywood is Blue Team, right? How many actors do we know? Oh, they're all Blue Team, just the ones that played presidents that you could grab. Morgan Freeman or Bill Pullman or...
Wait a minute. You're fake news.
There you go.
Everyone knows I'm the best thing that's ever happened to politics. I'm amazing. Ask anyone, they'll tell you.
He had that it factor to where now it doesn't matter how many indictments there are. It doesn't matter how many court appearances. Nobody cares. I mean, my mother, for example, or most of my family, she's like, he could be in jail. I'm still voting for him.
Right. You go. Well, at this point, it's just like we got to talking about it. Like it is what it is. It's exactly what it looks like, and people see that. So it's more of a vote for the truth than it is or belief in a system that we used to have versus what we're getting now. And that's Joe Biden. So give me your take on that.
Okay, my take on that is that now that we finally mercifully reached what I call Act 3, where America has to be taken down. The biggest problem with America is we were too good at what we did. Meaning there was nothing. The line I used some years ago was the Great Reset can't start until America starts crumbling, because
that's the decline that we see now. Yeah,
huge decline in America. Nobody has declined more than us. And if you want to, come on, they know better than that. If you want to project weakness in America, think about the primaries that ran before Biden won. Remember, Biden was out of the race. If you remember that election,
he was behind Klobuchar, Buttigieg, and Sanders at one point.
Sanders and
he only had like $1.5 million in campaign money.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, she was like, nope, she's too whatever she is. Bernie Sanders, like,
Indian.
no, we're not. Yeah, we're not going with Bernie Sanders. So it's like, oh no, we're going to bring in Biden. It's like, what are you talking about? He's too old. He can't actually possibly run. But if you want to project weakness, if you want to make America weak enough to where other countries, because before that, would you actually, attack America? America is daunting from another country standpoint. It's like, how do you even begin to beat America? But you start with degrading the society within, degrading the infrastructure. We're a mess. And then, come on, Biden. There's leaders out there. They're like, look at him. It's like, oh my God. And then you have your vice president. Look, I mean, I mentioned that on a podcast I did. What was that, last night? Where I said, people forget that it's like, if Biden trips and falls and dies tomorrow when he, walking down the stairs, or wherever he is. And again, kudos to whoever's propping him up at this point.
It's got to be a lot of work, right?
It's got to be.
It's got to be. I hope they're getting paid well.
Yeah,
I hope they're getting money.
They can't keep him from wandering, but by God, I mean, he's fallen so few times on, he's fallen more on the Air Force One.
Well, that's what we're seeing, and there's so much that this is what I tell everybody. There is so much that we're not seeing. Can you imagine?
No.
Well, look at Mitch McConnell.
Oh, there was a headline that was released today on Mitch where he said something to the effect of, what you saw wasn't really what you saw. What you saw didn't really happen. It's like, what do you mean? Where you just kind of froze and spaced out?
That's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars.
Yeah. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Absolutely.
Right.
So, I mean, I saw it on the internet on YouTube, so it had to have been true. Just saying.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Biden's a piece of work, though, because that's head shaking. Every time you see him, it's like...
And he's running, and I mean, we had a bet between a master gunner and me, where he was convinced that Biden was going to, they were going to just set up something where he was too ill to function, and Kamala was going to come in after year 2, and it didn't happen. And then we were kind of saying, well, he can't pick her approval ratings are so low, they can't actually bring her in as the VP again for a re-election campaign. And then it's like, oh, you really are trying to project weakness, because that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to have him come in as the oldest president ever. Every day is a new record. And then Kamala with the lowest rating. I mean, I don't even know what she's been doing lately. I don't even see her in the news anymore.
I have an idea. Anyway, let me tell you.
Yeah. She's doing it the hard way.
Yeah, I've been to combat. I have PTSD, and I have nightmares, but no nightmare is worse than the one that I have of Kamala Harris taking over as president. Let me tell you.
Well, she's got that. Okay, I don't want to pick on people's ticks, but when you're in politics, you really can't have poker ticks. And that nervous.
Did you say poker tits?
Is that the cackle?
Exactly. That is what I said. I said poker ticks.
You got my attention, sir.
Like a facial tick. She's got that nervous cackle that is not.
No, well, that's gone though, right? The cackle's gone.
Is it gone, or is she?
So remember that one thing where she cackled and she just kept doing it, and then all of a sudden she disappeared for like 2 weeks. And
you think they took her to like an acting coach and they said, "Okay, we got to get rid of this thing."
Yeah, kind of like learning how to do a salad or something. Or the utensils at a dinner table, they kind of broke it down and said, "No more cackling." And then that's when stuff got weird, because she almost didn't know how to act.
She had to replace it with something, and she didn't have
kind of people go that was like her and they took it from her, and then she had to speak, and then that's when it all kind of went to shit.
That's where I think they went the other route, which was up until Trump, which I think was the epitome of having somebody television ready. He was the epitome of that. My God, he literally went from a reality show to the Oval Office.
Yeah.
And then you switch over but then they had to change gears, which was, we have to make America look vulnerable to where other countries would be dumb enough to attack them. The Tucker Carlson thing, which you probably saw recently, which I talked about last night, which was when he came on and said that that it's only a matter of time before we get into a hot war with Russia, only because they can't allow the election to happen next year. He was hitting all the beats that I had already been talking about, which was, look, we're already in a war with Russia. We just haven't signed the papers. Espionage has been happening all the time, which is weird, right? If the media doesn't cover it, right? If the papers haven't been signed, is it really a war? No, it's not. You can blow up each other's stuff all day long, and you can cover it up and make it seem, oh, it's this industrial accident. Oh, hey, I know that Russian ship just blew up and sank, but it wasn't us. But he made it seem to say that how desperate. What the point was? Did you guys watch it at all? That little snippet that
I
he
heard
did?
about it, but I didn't.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's really good. But he basically said the point was, he said, look, we've gotten to the point where we've criminalized politics, meaning,
For sure.
as you know, they're indicting. Come on, they're indicting Trump to see if they can, one, get him to back out of the election process, which he's not going to do.
No.
And two, to slow it down to where he doesn't have any campaign. He can't do a whistle stop tour. He's going to be basically doing campaign quotes from the courthouse steps, which again, most people don't care, right? The whole Republican primary thing where all those people were lined up, right, which weren't Trump. It's like, why are you guys even talking? No one cares.
That's what I said. Like, why?
All you guys are
kind of
gunning.
embarrassing.
All you guys are gunning for is potential VP candidates, and I'm pretty sure he's going to pick either Tulsi Gabbard or who's the lady from South Dakota? Can't remember. Pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's her name? Yeah.
She's hot.
But yeah, she is hot. Pretty girls still get things. The Marsha Brady syndrome never goes away. That was the funny thing about the Brady movies, is they introduced Marsha Brady like if she was 70s but in the 90s, and it's like nothing changed, right? She still got everything she wanted. It's
right.
like, yeah, of course she did, because that's what happens.
Hey,
but if you
listen,
if you criminalize politics, what happens is, so they're doing all these things to Trump, and in the hopes that he loses. But the fear is that which is really the bigger problem is once you do that, you turn it into a blood feud. Because if hypothetically Trump won, he's going to turn around and do the same thing to everybody else, right? He's going to come around and say, "No, I'm indicting you and you and you and you."
When I seen that mugshot, that's what that mugshot told me was.
Well,
my buddies were making fun of it, and I said, if he wins,
yeah,
that's going to come back. That mugshot's going to mean something.
Well, yeah, but that mugshot was all. Don't think for a second that mugshot was like a one-off. That somebody went to that courtroom and remember they also phoned in his vitals. Did you see that on the report? So they phoned in his vitals, and they phoned in. It's like, oh no, how tall is Trump? 6'3". Well, how heavy is he? 215. It's like,
oh yeah.
Whoa, are you kidding? That's linebacker.
Yeah,
in the pros. It's like, really, 215, and nobody's buying it. But the mugshot, I know full well. It's like if you looked at all the other people that took the mugshots, on the group that it got, the lighting was perfect, the angle was perfect. It's like it was instantly turned into a T-shirt. It's like, yeah, I know what you guys are doing.
Well, this is what I said. There's no way he didn't practice that. He practiced that for months.
Yeah, but I also don't think in case he screwed it up. You're right, absolutely right. He probably did practice it, but in case he screwed it up, I guarantee come on, somebody at the jailhouse, it wouldn't take much. It's like, all right, can we get a couple more of those? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
that one. I mean, come on, $500, $1,000. Like, yeah, keep your freaking mouth shut.
Well, so we're talking Tucker Carlson, right? You brought him up, and I'm going to bring something up that he just said, which I had been saying previously, and my friends were laughing at me. They're like, "So you think he's going to be killed?" And I said, "Look, if they can't indict him, if they can't get him out of this race some way or another, I don't think they want to do that, but I think that they will do that."
Well, and I thought of that too. He opened with part of that. In fact, here I'll send you the quote. Do we have a chat room in here?
We do. It's not like there's not a track record of.
No, I mean, is there a button in here to insert text?
Yeah, do you not see? It should be on your right hand side. Do you not see it? Do you
not
not have the ability?
Lower left, right?
I'll tell you what. There's a private chat. If you put it in there, I'll put it in the chat room.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here, I'll make it easy for you. Let me. I'll just shoot it to you. Check your email. And this is This is the thing. But to your point, I thought of that too, of course, and so did Tucker. Which was, would you remove him? Could you remove him? You could, but remember, you could have already done that by now if you wanted to. Discrediting him is by far the safer move because, as you know, the rabid fans that are out there, I've never voted in my life, so I don't have a stake in it one way or the other, but my family does, which is if he died, it wouldn't even matter. You could not pick unless he was killed in a backyard by a couple of dogs that got off leash. Even then, right, people would be suspicious. But if he dies any other way, there would be riots. I mean, it would be bad because people would think, well, they got rid of him. So the safer bet, even though it sounds ridiculous, the safer bet would be a war, because, an actual hot war, because at that point you can implement some of the war powers protocols and say, well, we really shouldn't have an election right now. There it is. Yeah, that one. Have an election right now because it's not time to do it. And you postpone the election indefinitely. So there you go. I don't know if you're playing the audio for that, but the audio, I can't hear it.
Let's see.
Do you have a way to play the audio?
Yeah, give me a second.
It's a pretty good thing if you want to spare the 5
in the teeth of a very tough recession, and that makes everything much more intense. And so if your goal is to maintain power, and if you think once you relinquish power, the problem with criminalizing politics is the people who do it imagine or know that it will be done to them. So once you start indicting your political opponents, you know that you have to win or else they're going to indict you if they win, right?
Right.
And so they can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're not going to do COVID again. I know everyone on the right's afraid they're going to do COVID and mask mandate. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. If they've already been exposed, that won't work. There's going to be, no, what are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway. I don't think we'll win it, but that's a separate analysis. But I think it's a political matter. They need to declare war footing in order to assume war powers in order to win. I believe that. And I think the evidence suggests that's true. So if you're worried about our politics getting even more vicious than it already is, and people being hurt in our politics, which is entirely possible, you should be worried about the prospect of an open war. We're already at war with Russia, of course. We're funding their enemies. So we're fighting Russia. But I mean, an open battle with Russia where we say we're at war with Russia. I think that could easily happen. I think we could Tonkin Gulf our way into it, where all of a sudden missiles land in Poland. The Russians did it. Our NATO ally has been attacked. We're going to war. I could see that happening very easily. So if you're worried about that, you need to put as much pressure as you possibly can on the Republican-held Senate to force.
You could probably stop it at this point. So, but yeah, that was basically the gist of it. And I was on board. I've been talking about that for months.
So the take would be that if we start a war with Russia, we get into that. There's an election coming up. We don't want to switch presidents, most likely at that point. We just stick with the guy.
Yeah, the whole don't switch horses in midstream.
Okay.
That whole trope, which was done and the people will bring it up. I guarantee they'd bring it up when that was happening. The whole FDR thing. Remember, FDR had already served 2 terms, but the war wasn't over yet, and they're like, yeah, you know what?
And he gets 2 more, right?
And they kept him in there until he died. And then Truman was in there to finish the war out. He was the guy that got the bomb. So that's what they would do. But in this case, there wouldn't even be what they're kind of the thought is that you don't even get to the point where what you want to do is you don't want to wait too long where you're already in the primaries. You want to do it beforehand, so it's not even on anyone's mind. Otherwise, the Republicans are going to come in and say, well, you're using this as an excuse, and we absolutely should have an election, and blah, blah, blah. No, you do it early if you can.
This is going to sound stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you think that now that Tucker Carlson's brought this to everybody's attention, obviously he gets millions of views.
Yeah.
Couldn't they still go through with something like that?
Sure.
I mean, I know they're desperate.
Sure.
But
sure you can.
They can still do it, and then
because
now we know that.
I mean, there's a couple schools of thought there. One, of course, depending on what level you want to think at, could be manifesting 101. The fact that Tucker said this, and you've got all these people thinking it, it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to get into a hot war with Russia. Does it actually, does it make it happen? But the other thing is, because blue media, in fact, there was only one, when I ran that story yesterday, only one media outlet covered it. You know who it was? Russia Today. I read the Russia Today newspaper on a regular basis, and you know what? They didn't debunk it. They didn't say it wasn't going to happen. They just said it matter of fact. They said, "Oh yeah, Tucker says we're going to be in a hot war with Russia." That's it. It's like,
Wow.
it's like
Well,
nobody
adds,
came.
he also adds he doesn't think we'll win it. So,
Well, kind of like where he's going is, because he and I think, are the same age. He's going with did we win Vietnam? Right?
Well, we haven't
That's
won
what I was
anything
thinking,
since
but-
Vietnam.
Yeah. I mean, the war. It's oh god. There's some wonderful documentaries out there, but the one I recommend that refers to this is called "Why We Fight," and the line is, it's a great line. It said, when you get into war nowadays, we've refined it to such an art in America that you're getting 20-30% return on investment. Because when you see that sort of return on investment, you're going to start seeing a lot more war. Because
of course, yeah.
war is way more profitable than it used to be. So, and come on, nothing's short. What short war? What short conflict have we done? Ever?
Well, the last one was 20 years, right? So
We
had to
will
just pull
never
out of that
win.
one.
Well,
We will never win another war unless
he-
it is on our soil.
What he's saying, there you go. What he's saying is that there's no why would win, how? In fact, how would you win it? Exactly. What's the goal, right? Because it would be so weird. It's like, really, are we going to try to march on Moscow? And then what? Then what happens? What happens to the other countries? What happens to Belarus? What happens to all the countries that are holding on to Russia and stuff like that? What's the motivation? It doesn't really matter what the motivation is. The motivation is the distraction from everything else.
Right. So it serves two purposes. You don't want to switch horses mid-race, and you keep everybody's focus off of what's really going on. And
Yeah, which is why I was put. They tried this hot war that he's talking about should have happened a long time ago. But Russia didn't go for it. Come on, they know the old tricks. They've been doing war longer than we've been doing war. Yeah. And come on, they're built for it. They're the only group that survived the Nazi land assault. The only group. We couldn't have done it. In fact, if there was a land bridge, the what?
Or said, and then they took him down too to boot, right? So they storm the castle and bring him down. So.
Well, yeah, but they lost.
You said a word that I really want to hone in on, and that was distraction.
Yes.
I want to know what your thoughts are on what the distraction is with releasing all of this UFO crap recently.
I think the UFO stuff is tricky for them because they want to release it. Anyone in the truther community, if something happens that there's a big UFO fleet that shows over somewhere, they'll say, oh, it's got to be Project Bluebeam, it's got to be fake, or it's got to be ours. America is very cagey that way, in that we like taking credit for stuff we didn't do, which I love. We love saying stuff like, well, those UFOs probably aren't ours. Wink, wink. It's like we'd love to take credit for it. Kind of like the line when the one I love when the SR-71 spy plane, it went literally from inception to retirement. Nobody knew about it, to where the Air Force did a press conference when they were retiring it. Love it, right? They bring people out to the desert. It's like, oh yeah, we're retiring our spy plane, and they're going, the what now? and the line that I remember, the Air Force general, I don't remember his name, but they asked him, of course, they said, well, hey, what are you going to replace it with, right? He looks, he goes, no, nothing. It's like, what? Of course, right? Because there's not going to be, technically you didn't have spy planes to begin with. I love America's thing where it's like, there are no spies, technically. We have no spies. Oh, we've got intelligence networks, but we have no spies, officially. So when spy things happen, but anyway, so sorry, as far as distractions, I don't think the distraction is really so much from the alien agenda. I think the alien agenda, or what, if you want to do some sort of blue beam or introduce a new civilization, whether they're real or not, I think that's just a wild card they can pull out whenever they think things are getting out of hand. And then they turn it into Reagan's UN speech from years ago. where he said, well, wouldn't we all just get together if there was an external threat from outside this world? It's like, yeah, it's human nature. Of course it would. We wouldn't be fighting each other if there was something fighting in the sky. I do think there is a little bit of a distraction from the pandemic and pandemic related things. Mm-hmm. Remember the pandemic, I knew exactly when the mandates were going to start rolling back, because when it happened was when the Ukraine war started officially. It was like we were like, masks and shots and blah, 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 blah. And it was nonstop, as you guys know, right? And then all of a sudden, Ukraine war, and then all the pandemic stuff is like put on the back burner. It's like nobody cared anymore. It's like, what?
Yeah, Ukraine war cured the pandemic, right?
It did. It absolutely cured.
Biden said it was over. So I mean,
Biden said it was over. And so what he was saying, by the way, it's like, could they roll it out again? Well, they could roll out little parts of it if they wanted to do another thing, but you can't do it. You can't do another rollout like that without a real scare, without some real fear. And by that I mean something Ebola in nature, where you all of a sudden you hear about a town that's been sealed off, like what was that Dustin Hoffman movie?
Outbreak,
right? Where they seal off the freaking town, and it's like, and then all of a sudden, well, in real life, they probably would just nuke the town, and then it turns into a Stephen King novel, The Stand. So, but if you did that, then you could generate some real fear and turn it into something. But again, I was impressed with the fact that, the repetition, the Nazis said so many times. It's like, if you repeat something over and over and over, it's like, be afraid, wear the mask, take the shot, be afraid, wear the mask, take the shot. That did work with a lot of people. I mean, there's still, I don't know where you guys are, but 10 to 20% of the people I run into on a regular basis, you can tell they're going to wear the mask for the rest of their lives. They're not taking them off. The mandates, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. Doesn't matter who says that it's over. They feel that's now their new comfort zone. And that's powerful. The fact that you did this, it's like, they're driving past me in their car wearing masks all by themselves. Like, wow, we're gonna keep doing that. So
right.
But anyway, I think the cover up. I think if you want to look for a distraction, that's what I was looking for. I think it was always supposed to be you do a pandemic-y thing, and then you get the war started. Either and I'm really disappointed in the Chinese. Chinese, you're listening? Oh, what the hell?
They're listening.
They probably are. Well, no, I am disappointed because it was supposed to be a kind of a repeat where it's like you have a European theater and you have Pacific theater. The Taiwan thing, it's like, oh, Nancy Pelosi's going to Taiwan, and the Chinese are. It's like, you better not do it, right? And then I'm waiting. It's like, oh man, are you gonna do flyovers? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And they did nothing. Absolutely freaking.
In Nancy's defense, she heard that they had vodka half off, so that's why she was going.
but I mean, it's like you can't get. I shouldn't pick on China so much, but come on. I mean, I understand now why the Japanese beat up on them so badly. The Japanese have a better. That's that whole warrior spirit. You hear the stories where it's like you hear the stories and you don't believe it, right? It's like, oh no, Japan just ripped the hell out of these guys, back in the day, and it's like, really? Because they outnumbered.
I was stationed in Japan several times, so I got to hear the history both from the U.S. side and from the Japanese side. They wrecked house.
Yeah. The I will say this, the movies did get some of the things right, the duty and honor. And come on, name me another group that had, the fact that kamikaze is a term that's attributed to one group, right? Nobody was the new kamikaze. It was these guys. It's like, oh yeah, fine, you can wear a vest and blow up some stuff, but flying a plane, and where there's a ceremony before you get on the plane. It's like, oh man.
So you don't think that China's going to be the superpower that everybody thinks that
they have a chance to? I mean, if you believe in the prophecy, oh my God. I mean, if you believe it, I mean, let's put it. Nobody else has the potential of putting a standing army anywhere. We don't have it. Russia doesn't have it. Nobody's got it except for China. But does China have the nerve to do it? Would their troops be able to? What sort of troop morale? And I really don't say this a lot, but do they have the troop morale to pull into a country and hang out like Rome did? God, I miss the Romans. The Romans, the fact that they could for 1,000 years, the difference, and I this is sports reference for you. Because people say, "Oh, is the American, the greatest empire in the world?" I go, "No, we're the Michael Jordan of empires. We were the flashiest. We got the best show. We're the greatest show on earth, no question." But the Wilt Chamberlain of empires was freaking Rome.
Right, yeah.
Mostly because you convince the population to go along with your mantra. We lie to our public, right? We say we're the good guys, like we're taking it over, for good guy reasons. Rome, it's like, so, the public demanded it. It's like, what have you conquered for us today? Oh, you tore up half of Europe? That's fantastic. Who are we hanging in the Colosseum? Right? And that that century after century, to where after 1,000 years, I think they was like forgot who they were.
Now, did you use the Wilt Chamberlain reference because Rome was just fucking everything?
Here's the difference. Because Michael Jordan, I'm from that era. Look, I stopped watching basketball when Jordan stopped playing.
You didn't even hear me.
What were you going to say?
I said because Rome was fucking everything.
Okay, for those who are listening, you'd have to know the Wilt Chamberlain joke that Wilt Chamberlain slept with a lot of women.
6,000. It was like 600.
Yeah,
6,600.
he absolutely had no shortage of women. But here's the difference, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but it's a good point, which is when Jordan came into your house, when he came into your arena, you cheered for him. It's like, I want to see a show. I want to see freaking Jordan. I want to see him posterize somebody, right? It's cool, right? Mm-hmm. When Wilt Chamberlain showed up in the arena, everybody booed him. And because
your mom was
you
pregnant.
could
when Wilt
not
Chamberlain showed up, your mom got pregnant.
Well, it wasn't okay. It
just reminds me of that old meme: hide your wives, hide your children.
You couldn't stop him.
Wilt Chamberlain came over and your cat's pregnant.
Oh God! Oh my God!
He does love the pussy.
You could triple team him and you couldn't stop him. He was getting during that amazing.
He was a monster though. He was huge. He was a big guy.
Yeah, 61-62 season. He averaged 50 points a game.
Right.
Averaged 50 points a game. Meaning no matter what you did, he was going to at least get 50 points again. And just to make the point, they let him go one night, and he's the only player in history to score 100 just because he could. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to score 100 points, and then I'm going to sit on the bench. And the point, and he had a quote, which was, he goes, and I loved it. He goes, "Everyone hates Goliath." And it's like, that's the truth.
It's true.
So anyway, the point was
Three women that night. I think that's what they said it was, 3 women a night or more. He would have had to have done during that time frame. Because you can look that up. Andy, you might be able to find that. But it was like 6,000 women during the course of his career.
Oh, yeah.
He was proud of it, too.
Oh, no. I thought I didn't know much about basketball when I was in grade school. But and I was one of the, back in the day when you buy like the Guinness Book of World Records, the little book, and you thumb through it. When you went to the basketball section, I thought he was basketball. I mean, there's just all these records. It was just this wall of records. And there were stats they didn't even keep back then. Yeah. And he owned them all. And it's like, I mean, people forget that when he retired, they were still trying to recruit him out of retirement all the way up until he was 50. Mm-hmm. Because, he never stopped playing. He just, went around to different, pickup leagues and stuff like that. And people saw him. It's like, good Lord, he can still beat the crap out of everybody. And so anyway, the point was, circle back to, there's Wilt Chamberlain. Yeah, fantastic. And players still say he was the strongest guy ever. I mean, you want to see it's a wonderful testimonial. Listen to like Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about Wilt Chamberlain. And thisis back,
they did Conan too, right?
Yeah.
Conan.
Yeah. He was,
that together. And who was Brigitte Fonda or Brigitte Nielsen?
Yeah, Brigitte Nielsen, who was Stallone's
she was
wife.
Huge too.
Yeah, she was a freaking monster, and
that's a huge bitch.
Yeah, and I love. There was a little story about Brigitte where she got the role. Her first role was playing Dolph Lundgren's wife in Rocky IV.
Right.
And the fact she just went straight up to his hotel room, knocked on the door, and something skimpy. That was it.
All right, Mark.
Alone, right? Because then they got married.
Then they got married. It's like, good for you.
Here's the question of the day.
Yeah, what's the question?
Question of the day.
Yeah.
Would you hit it?
Who, Brigitte?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hit it with a fucking 2x4.
Brigitte, she didn't keep herself. I mean, she's European, so you never know what happens over there. But yeah, back in the day, no, she was freaking gorgeous. She was, when I watched Rocky IV, the first time. Yeah, she really stuck out. It's like, wow, she was something.
Yeah.
And again,
I lost all respect with Flavor Flav.
Flavor
That's
Flav,
all I must
yeah.
say. Flavor
Well, remember
Flav.
so she went on and did Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
And she ended up fucking who was it? Tony Scott was the director, and there was a big deal because she was married to Stallone at the time, and it was pretty controversial, and that ended their marriage there because everything looked good until it didn't.
yeah,
I think you could have stopped that. She fucked.
Oh yeah, she loved it. Yeah,
you don't want to get okay. While we're on that, let's go into a different direction really quick, which is when it comes to Hollywood. I'm a big fan of Hollywood gossip. When it comes to Hollywood, it's one of those things I throw at media, because I say, look, there's conspiracies and everything. There's business and politics and sports and entertainment and even science and journalism. And they say, oh, it's like, well, entertainment. I go, really? You want me to give you? I mean, look at the illusion of Hollywood. I go, I've thrown this at different producers, and I go, really? I go, okay, resolve this statement. There are no gay leading men in Hollywood, right? And then, I get this snicker, there. So I go, really? I go, name 3 of them. And I go, you can't. I go, even if you wanted to, you can't because you're afraid of the backlash that might happen out there. I mean, come on, let's,
So does it have to be from this era or?
Well, no. In fact, but that was one of my points. Until you die, your secrets are pretty much kept in Hollywood.
I think we knew Montgomery Clift, right?
Dude, Rock Hudson,
James Dean, Rock Hudson.
James Dean,
or what do you call Rock Hudson in a wheelchair?
Oh my God!
Oh,
you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Rolaids.
Yeah, that's an old one. That was from when we were kids.
By the way, I mean, he was absolutely straight until he died, and then everybody came out of the closet. It was the whole Tiger Woods cocktail waitress scenario. Once the first one comes out, they're all coming out, and if you die, they're coming out. There's one that I love. I'll give you a mind bender really fast, which is John Ritter, right? Who played John Ritter in real life, Tripper. Right? Gay man pretending to be straight because his audience is mostly middle-aged women, right? Going to work every day playing Jack Tripper, a straight man pretending to be gay for the landlords so he can stay with Janet and Chrissy.
Right.
What was going through his head when he got home? It's like, what am I doing? He was absolutely doing the exact opposite and kept it all the way, till his freaking dying day.
He wasn't gay though. He was married to
Oh, come on, man. You're old enough to know better. Right, you're right. I'm sorry. Gay people don't get married.
No. Was he really gay?
Right, I didn't. No, I get that. Gay people don't get. No, it's true. If you're gay, no, it's called bearding up. I know a few things.
Pun intended.
Bearding up, and it throws people. No, I mean, look at. I'll give you a great example. Cary Grant. Okay, Cary Grant, who
they say he was gay, right? He was with
Randolph Scott.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Randolph Scott. The Randolph Scott. And the only reason I even know his name is because of the Blazing Saddles reference. If you're wondering, it's like, why do I know that name? Because in the Western Blazing Saddles, they said, you do it for Randolph Scott. And then they go, Randolph Scott. They put their hands on their heart. Because he was this chiseled Western character actor, right? That didn't have much in the way of actors, but he had this chiseled Western thing. And he and Cary Grant had his bachelor pad together for like 10 years. The bachelor pad, right?
So do you guys know what the first sign of AIDS is?
Oh, God. What?
A deep pounding sensation in the rectum.
Oh, my God. The fact that you have multiple AIDS jokes worries me.
Right?
It really worries me. But my point...
I'm a Navy guy. What do you want?
My point is that Cary Grant, at one point, here's how they put you up. You ready? So Cary Grant to throw everybody off the trail because you get worried after a while, right?
And the women loved him, by the way.
They absolutely adored him.
Like a George Clooney type of guy back then.
So they had him marry one of his secretaries, and then almost immediately afterwards, they divorced because he supposedly hit her a few times, right? Yeah, that whole macho thing. So if you want to go out on it's like slap around, Sean Connery style.
Again.
Yeah, so they divorced because he was too rough, too manly. It's like, okay, that's brilliant. And so that's how you do it. And so, come on, Hollywood marriages for appearances' sake.
Oh, for sure.
All day long. Or hell, if you're gonna do that, sorry, not to backtrack a little bit, the whole Obama and Joan Rivers type thing. Right?
Thank you for coming back to that, because
the one that always kills me was Roddy McDowell, right? He came out years later. They found out, and I was thinking, really, like it took that long to figure out Roddy McDowell.
You don't. I have heard from various producers that, and I'm not picking on gay people. Look, they're the most creative people in the world. That once they're easier to control in Hollywood, because once you get your fan base, which is mostly straight, no matter what, you don't want to lose that, and they hold that over your head. It's like, oh yeah, you can come out, and then they'll throw out examples like yeah, Anne Heche came out. Remember, she was dating Ellen DeGeneres
for like
what
a
happened
week.
to her career?
Yeah.
Or look at Kelly McGillis from Top Gun, right? She came out and it's like, oh yeah, I'm the hot shit, right? I did Top Gun. I'm gay. It's like, yeah, so casting calls, no more for you, and it just goes on and on and on. So you don't want to risk it. You just don't.
I got a question for you since we're on this topic, and
Gay.
what's with the trans? What is your thoughts on the transgender movement, which it has always been around?
I think it is the fact that you put a spotlight on it recently is just what we were talking about earlier. It is the dividing the dividing of America.
Okay.
Oh my God. I mean, yes, of course they've been out there for trans community, which is fringe of a minority. Is if you believe in the minority, the entire gay minority is half in, half out of the closet, makes up 1 in 10 people. And then you divide up, however you want. But the fact that you are, again, I knew there was an agenda going on when the kids were gay involved. When you're promoting, when there's all these doctors and all these, and part of it, you could say they're gaining on the money. Of course, why not? If people are willing to pay you tons of money, why wouldn't you do it, right? It's like ethics you can throw out the window. Plastic surgeons should have ethical problems,
right?
But don't.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to watch because of again, probably part of the narrative of how it's just wrecking families. I mean, there are families because they don't know what to do with it. Normal gay outlets in families, that's been around forever, right? But this is something new, and nobody knows what to do with it. And so I don't think the pronouns are going to stick, any of that crap. It's just silly. In fact, by the way, while you're on that real fast, I have to mention this because it was really bothering me that some of the people have been going around saying, oh, they can't define what a woman is. So many people are afraid to answer that question, right? It's like, what's a woman? What's a woman? It's like, wait a minute, isn't it simple enough to say it's, for me, I stared at this as, wait, isn't it just a human being that can produce eggs? Isn't that really it? Now, there's of course the trans group will come out there and say, well, that's not the definition that I subscribe to, and that's not. I want to change that. It's like, well, okay, you want to change it, that's fine, but I have to remind you of something, and this is something. Sorry, I don't want to dwell too much, but I don't believe in male privilege, and I don't believe in white privilege. I believe in majority privilege. Meaning, if you have one or more of three things, which is you either have the numbers, you have the military, or you have the money, right? If you have one or more of these things, you're probably going to have the majority. And if you do, you are going to take privileges. You are going to bend the rules to suit you, to keep what you're doing, to favor your group. And so anyone I talk to, along the fringe community is like, look, there's majority and minority. If you want to change the rules, you have to become the majority. You're not going to be able to change it as a minority. You might be able to bend, change a few things here and there, but that's just how it works. And once you become the majority, you are going to start, doing things that other lesser groups are going to, start criticizing. That's just how it's gone throughout time. No group, when they reach the majority, has ever said, well, this is just good enough, and let's be fair to everybody else. It's like, no. Yeah. No, you try to keep what you're doing. So
I'm offended.
No.
In short, you think that this whole push, just because it's a group that's, like you said, extremely small, and they have a ton of power. I mean, amazing.
Their problem is that their asset and their problem is that Blue Team is very, very sympathetic to the gay community. I was going to say the
that's
pride
both.
community. Right.
I mean,
it just is. Hollywood is mostly blue,
right.
and the media is mostly blue. So the two go hand in hand. But the problem is that even if they wanted to criticize it, they can't, because they're all under the same flag and they're not allowed to. So, which is why I get so upset.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the sports one really quick. I am very, very much against the sports crossovers. You know, the Canadian weightlifter the other month.
Right. Yeah.
Drove me freaking insane. It was like, you broke a record that's never going to be broken by a biological female ever.
Right.
And you did it while you were 40. And I called this months and months ago. I said, okay, here's where it ends and where the whole thing just falls apart. You're saying that LeBron, who's going to be 40 here pretty soon, right? When LeBron turns 40, and a lot of athletes at that level become, they're warriors. They don't want to quit, right? It's like, you know what? He could shave his beard, spend a year, transition over to the WNBA, and destroy it.
200 points
go
a
in
game.
that first season and just annihilate them, right? Is that fair in any capacity?
I would actually like to see that happen, but I want to see him do it with the beard.
He probably could, but the point is, once you do that, you might as well, you're killing. Where I was getting here is that, look, I was in sports in high school, and I know a lot of sports people, and when the lesbian community there's a lot of them in female sports, right? Has been for a long time. It's not a big secret, and that group you are going to wipe out if you keep going down the way you're going.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's at that point you might as well, and they can't. I feel so bad for them because the lesbian community can't say anything.
It's a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah, they can't say anything. It's like, well, we are family and we're under the same banner, so we can't go against them. At the meantime, it's like, oh yeah, well, there goes your trophy, there goes your marathon, there goes your powerlifting and all this, and you're letting them do it. And so I hope you're ready, because I think it'll work itself out naturally, honestly. Because once you get to a certain point, you're basically saying, well, there shouldn't be men and women sports. There should just be sports. Yeah. And at that point, most women just won't be in sports.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is like the men, they want to get into the locker rooms. These trans men want to get on women's teams, and they want to get into women's prisons, but you don't see it the other way around.
Right.
You don't see women trying to get into men's locker rooms.
No.
You don't see women trying to get into men's restrooms. No. You don't see them trying to get into prisons, and you certainly don't see them trying to get into the UFC cage to fight the like Francis Ngannou or somebody.
No. And again, women have such limited opportunities at the professional level. Yes, collegiate, they're all there. High school, they're all there. But at the professional level, God, what was Bill Burr's great quote? He said, really, other than UFC fighting, like Gina Carano, that, or, I mean, ice skating, I suppose, is one where, you probably wouldn't see much of a crossover, hopefully. But yeah, there's a reason why, look, men invented these sports. And now we're at that state where I feel bad for the WNBA. I feel bad for women's soccer, because they just don't get the numbers. Which is again one of Bill Burr's lines, which he's like, where are all the feminists? Why didn't all the feminists show up in the stands?
But how funny would it be to watch a 150-pound male figure skater try to lift that 245-pound male to female transgender female skater?
Oh, yeah,
good point. So anyway, I think it'll work itself out. There's backlash right now. There's already documentaries coming out about the kid mothers talk, and they share stories, and it will not take long before the transition stories that went horribly. It's already out there.
Yeah,
have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, oh hey, learn from this, because it is. I don't know.
It's horrific. I mean, it really is.
I don't know this.
You bring that up, and it's a sad fact that we don't have enough data yet to see how it affects all the detransitioners, right?
No,
that's a brand new thing coming out. So we're not going to see anything to substantially document any kind of case for at least 20 years.
Well, I'm not a big believer that we'll make it that far without some sort of incident, because the tear down of the family structure in America. And by the way, the pandemic also affected a lot of families. Really put the pressure on families because they had to stay home.
Yep.
There was that divorce lawyer thing that I was listening to the other day. He goes, there was an uptick. he goes, families that like never had lunch together ever had to do it every freaking day because they never could really leave the house. And he goes, these groups were not built for that. And so there was all this new series of problems.
Oh boy, here we go in the comment section.
What's the comment section?
Here we go. Mark Sargent promised to delete his channel and quit Flat Earth if he was sent a photo of curvature of the Earth. He has received the photo. Dude, we're not even talking Flat Earth right now.
I know, but I'll address one thing. I mean, again, I appreciate the fact that the trolls are now unified against me, and that was part of the plan. But again, resolve one of the three things. When anyone emails me, and I usually send them again either the 121,000 foot balloon footage, which shows it perfectly flat, and they say, well, that's the wrong lens. I go, okay, so my lens is wrong, but yours is right. Or I send the Neil deGrasse Tyson footage where he says that no civilian can see the curvature because you can't get high enough. And then I say, is Neil deGrasse Tyson wrong? And I've had pilots come back and say, oh no, Neil Tyson's absolutely wrong. It's like, really? Because he was right about a whole bunch of other things. So you're going to cherry pick. So Neil Tyson is right about everything that's astrophysics except for the curvature of the Earth. That he's stone cold dead on. Wrong. He's absolutely wrong. Or the Red Bull jump, which I love so much. Which, again, trolls that are listening, tell me, is the Red Bull jump footage real? Is it accurate? Showing this massive curvature of the Earth, which basically means the whole world is the size of Arizona. And again, that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson was picking on in the first place. He says Red Bull was absolutely dishonest. And I've talked to producers, and I say, why did you run that Red Bull jump footage, right? And where it shows this massive curvature, I go, that's not where the curvature. They were only 130,000 feet up. He goes, yeah, but it was a good picture, wasn't it? Yes, it was. It was more dramatic, and that's the whole point. You're there to sell stories. The line from I'll give you a quick one real quick. Clickbait has never died. Sensationalism in news and headlines. There was this wonderful story that I read yesterday from Russia, of all things, RT.com. And they said, Ukraine attacks Mars. It's like, what? Okay, clickbait. Absolute clickbait. And you're clicking in, and it's like, is it a lie? No, it is not a lie. Why? Because Ukraine is criticizing any American company that's still doing business in Russia, including Pepsi and Mars. So therefore, Ukraine is actually attacking Mars. But you don't have to put a picture from Mars attacks as the thumbnail. It's not the same freaking thing. Okay, so what was this? I'm sorry, I can't see behind the Red Bull jump. Has nothing to do with Mark Sargent lying about deleting his channel. Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. You can't resolve one thing and not the other. You guys can send me as many pics as you want now. It's too late. I had it out there for at least 6 years. You guys said nothing, and then a couple of troll channels come out. It's like, oh, we're gonna send them just any random picture of the Earth from
Mark,
space.
I'm gonna send you a picture later, buddy.
Oh, please do. Please do. Oh, is it gonna be one of those pics? Is it from your OnlyFans page?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Soft white underbelly.
To Sergeant Rock, and by the way, thank you for having your first name as my last name. Which is, tell me, is Neil deGrasse Tyson the world's most famous scientist? Is he wrong when he said point blank that no civilian can see the curvature because they can't get high enough? Even at 100, even the Red Bull jump, which was
Would
what he
you
was
be
talking
willing to take a phone call from this gentleman if he is so
Dude, you don't want to put
so?
him on. It's
Okay.
You do not want to put. You want to put a troll on this channel. It's going to end horribly. No,
it'd be funny.
He can email me directly. He can make content like anyone else. I don't debate garden variety trolls.
So didn't deGrasse Tyson just kind of
here he goes. He's gonna keep going with this. You promised to quit your channel. As soon as what? As soon as anybody sent me any photos from an airline, it's too late. It's absolutely too. Also, Neil deGrasse Tyson has nothing to do with your promise. Oh, it absolutely does. Now he's afraid. I emailed, but he blocked. How did I block him? I blocked you from what? Whatever.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse come out and say something. he's all for the transgender, and there was some video.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he kind of
What? Wait.
a little bit like,
and it was late in the game. I was so disappointed because he has helped us more than he's hurt us, and he came out, and yeah, he was defending it, and it was mostly because he's got a relative that's and usually he's got a family member that's trans. And that's usually what happens. Although then you got a guy like Elon Musk who's got a trans son, and he's kind of staying. He's against it. He tries to play both sides of the fence, which is why one of the reasons I dislike that man so much, because he tries to play both sides.
Okay.
He tries to say, Tucker's right sometimes. Why do you keep posting this? Mark made a promise. Wow, you're just going to keep saying that over and over and over. Great. Hey, by the way, every time, and this is one of the reasons why I don't read comments very much, is every time, and I've said this for 8 years, every time a troll hits my channel, you're just adding to the metrics. You are shooting wooden arrows into a bonfire. From a distance, it looks like you're doing something. All you're doing is adding to the metrics. So please, there was a guy that says, he's like, oh, hey, can I be a moderator on your channel? And I said, are you kidding? The trolls? I go, I'd love 100 more like them. This guy, was one of my complaints in the speeches I've been doing for 2 years. I go, it's not the problem that I have trolls. It's that I don't have good trolls. The Flat Earth community as a whole, we do not have the best trolls in the world. We don't have any celebrity trolls right now. Joe Rogan tried for a little bit, didn't work. The metrics has nothing to do with you lying. He's just going to keep doing this over and over.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's entertaining.
Please, by all means, keep hammering on it, man. It's
entertaining for me.
Work.
Rogan was pretty hot on that, right? He believes a lot of stuff, but
okay, here's the Joe Rogan story really fast. So Joe Rogan, before the Flat Earth thing happened, he was, you remember Joe Rogan's career? You're old enough to remember when he was on news radio back in the day. You know the character he played back on news radio? He was the conspiracy guy, right? He was the guy that came in and was like, dude, there's all sorts of weird government stuff happening. He was always on that path. And I think that got into his head and he went down rabbit holes for real. And
I think it was the weed.
Yeah, it could have been the weed. Well, I don't know how much weed he was doing back then. Remember, this was pre everything. So he did a number of podcasts, and one he was going after against NASA. And if you know debate, in a debate, both sides being equal, the person with the most passion usually wins, right? The most conviction. They just come off as like they believe it more. And he was destroying NASA people. Now he knew nothing about flat Earth, but he was saying we absolutely did not go to the moon. The moon was absolutely, there's so many things wrong with the moon. And I think they got to him pretty quick because he went dark for almost a year. And when he came out, he had a brand new show on the Sci-Fi Network called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And
I remember that. Yeah.
Episode 1, he apologized for everything bad he ever said about NASA. And then shortly after that, then he starts getting to other TV gigs. He did the Man Show and then UFC stuff. And then, of course, they always took care of him. I mean, come on. He's got the #1 podcast in the world. I understand he's got a certain demographic group, but the #1 podcast in the world. So, but he absolutely criticized flat Earth on a regular basis, and he would bring it up to guests. And I knew what was happening. It was in his head, and he'd love to bring it up, but he couldn't officially bring it up. So he went vicariously through Eddie Bravo, and tried to trigger a number of
guy, right?
The what?
Is it Bravo's a big conspiracy guy?
Huge conspiracy.
Right, okay.
In fact, Eddie Bravo was what got us on the Alex Jones show. David Weiss was talking to Alex Jones via Skype, and Eddie Bravo was sitting right next to Alex Jones, high as a freaking kite, just making sure that Alex wouldn't get off track. It was great listening to him because like Alex would like try to do that, rah, 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 and then and Eddie would like elbow and be like, "No, man, listen to David.
Wait a minute.
He's dropping some knowledge on you, right?"
Are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to convince me? It's bad enough flat Earth, all right?
What?
Are you trying to convince me that Eddie Bravo was high? I just don't believe that.
One, you cannot hang out with Joe Rogan as a best friend for that long without getting that high. But I'm sorry, one more thing. And at one point, okay, here's where it peaked out with Joe Rogan. He tried to get a debate. And because Eddie Bravo is a huge Eric Dubay fan, and if you're an Eric Dubay fan, then you're against everybody else, right? For the most part. So Joe, he convinced Joe, and Neil Tyson was on the show, and he said, "Hey, Neil Tyson, I'd love you to debate Eric Dubay." on this show. If I bring in Eric, will you debate him? And Neil Tyson played it perfectly. He just said, oh yeah, absolutely, we'll make that happen, right? Yeah. Nod, wink, right? No, it was never. Neil Tyson has never debated anyone in his life, and he's not going to. That's not his specialty. He is a.
You've never debated with him at all?
Nobody's debated with him.
Okay.
He doesn't debate. That's not his thing. He goes up on stage, and I'm not racial profiling or anything. He is a cross between Sinbad and Cosby, right? He's got a great stage presence. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's got a quick. He's quick, so he does the whole song and dance. He's like a science Jack in the Box, dun, 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 space is amazing, and it works. It works really, really well. He could, and it just dumb luck. He could have been.
Hold on, Mark. Sergeant Rock, please don't leave. I was so entertained.
Why? Why do you lie? Why do you lie?
Oh, he's going live?
Going live. So.
Mark is a liar. Oh, hey,
okay.
Great. Have fun with that.
Well, don't leave because it's so entertaining with the same sentence over and over again.
Again, I don't mind. It doesn't bother me because, look, I got tired. It was the same reason why I got rid. I probably should have gotten rid of the airplane challenge because nobody ever took me up on it until this year. The other challenge I threw out there was the vacuum chamber test, which was people, because I tried to explain to people, I go, look, the spacesuit doesn't work. It can't work. It defies physics. I go, out to prove it, I will, loan me a spacesuit, put me in a university vacuum chamber with another person, hopefully, otherwise I might die by myself, and pull the switch. Tell me how I survive. And I put that out there for like 5 years. Nobody even entertained it. Why would you? No scientist to this day, including Sergeant Rock, by the way, I know your vocabulary is limited, but tell me, Sergeant Rock, for example, what magical thing in the backpack of a spacesuit allows it to counteract the vacuum of space? Tell me why a spacesuit doesn't turn into a parade float into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and then blow up. Tell me how that doesn't happen. No scientist will address it because and look, I'm a fairly clever guy. I can't even think from a fictional standpoint how to do it. How I would even try to, even if we had the technology now. But you're saying we did this with analog in '69? No. Well,
it's clearly the flux capacitor.
Yeah, we could use the flux capacitor.
Clearly.
But yeah, in '69, come on. We had zero tech in '69. We had terrible tech. It was awful. We had nothing. We didn't even have dial-up modems in '69.
Listen, Sergeant Rock, do what you got to do, my friend. I don't want to derail you from what we were talking about, Mark. So we'll just let Sergeant Rock go live and he can do what he got to do.
I don't know who he is. Hey, great first name, though. Love it. Absolutely love it. No, because that
you've got to be used to that. Mark. You've got to be used to that. Right? I mean, at this point, it's pretty controversial.
Are you kidding? Trolls came at me immediately back in 2015. You can imagine, right? You're coming on the internet, nobody's talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I think the Earth is flat. Oh my God, you could. I mean, the comment sections are just deep with all sorts, and I don't blame them because everybody starts out in the hole. Everybody hates flat Earth when they first get into it. I hated it. Everybody know all the speakers that are on the conference that we're doing in October. In Vegas, all those people hated it. Hell, David Weiss, for example, one of our heavy interviewers, he would ban people from chat, lifetime bans, if they even brought it up. And they kept bringing it up, and finally, one of his friends said, "Hey, have you ever looked into?" And he's like, "Not you too." And then finally, he started, looking into it, and now, he's one of the most prolific video makers that is out there. So. But yeah.
Yeah, and I actually before the show I pulled up a couple YouTube videos of you at conferences and people. So you seem to get a lot of that. You get a lot of trolls. You get a lot of people. If you're doing
I do, but I don't mind because, in fact, I'll give you a quick example. I was doing an interview with a guy down at a New Zealand conference that we did some years ago, and he put me in the hot sun. This was like an Alex Jones of New Zealand. And he was grilling me in the hot sun. He was sitting in the shade, and I was sitting in the sun deliberately for 40 minutes, right? And after a while, he tells the cameras to stop, right? And this is, it's a fairly big production. And he goes, look, I'm hitting you with everything I've got. I'm being insulting. I'm using profanity. You're cooking out here. I'm not even offering you water. He's going, what the hell? He goes, why can't I get you to break character? And I go, because it's not a character, it's not an act. And I go, and I can't get mad because I used to be you. 5 years ago, I was you. So what, it would be hypocritical for me to go after trolls and yell at them and give them too hard of a time because I was on that side of the fence. I absolutely would make fun of it. The line I used from, I know we got to wrap this up pretty soon, but there's a line I used in the first Flat Earth Clues, which is I had friends back in 2015 that swore that the entire royal family was made out of lizard people, right? And I would go to them and it's like, yeah, but what about this flat earth thing? And they go, get the hell out of here. It's like, what are you talking about? You just told me lizard people, right? That's not wild. Flat earth, that's absolutely wild. And that's when I knew the scope of this thing. This thing was bigger than all other conspiracies combined because it's the only thing we debunk to children. So I get it. So I don't mind. Comment sections and people, no, I don't mind.
Yeah, and I mean, to your credit, you've got a lot of points. I mean, you make a lot of good arguments. Well, there's still a part of me, and I think we talked about this last time that
everything in your own time, man. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to persuade you.
Right? Yeah. Right.
I'm just here to put the idea in your head, and you have to resolve it for yourself. The most unsatisfying thing of being in our community is that when you want people to change, when you want that flip, that light switch, you're never going to get it when you want it to, which is why, the holidays are going to be coming up eventually. And I have to warn people every single year. I say, don't do it. I know what you want to do. You're going to go home. You're going to sit over a Christmas ham or whatever it is, or Thanksgiving. And people say, hey, Fred, what have you been up to lately? And you're going to want to say, let me tell you what I've been into, man. I've been into flat earth. Absolutely do not do that at a dinner table. People, because the curse of our community is when that light switch happens, you forget the entire hero's journey that took to get you there. And you think, oh, you know what? I could absolutely convince my cousin over a cup of coffee. In fact, I'm going to give it a shot. There's this optimism that comes over you, and I have to, it's like, just don't. It'll be a terrible idea.
So you brought up the holidays. I want to believe that Santa Claus is real. What's it?
That's a nice idea. Okay, do you want to know how this will tug at your heart a bit? You know how I found out about Santa Claus, or how that wrecked for me, is I was home. It was in January and the snow was still on the ground, and I was rooting around. You know how when you're young, you're a kid, you go through your parents' drawers and stuff like that. You just warm it. Is there any? What? I'm bored. There's nothing happening, right? It was the 70s on top of it. And I look in my mom's, one of the drawers in her dresser, and I found in a little rubber banded bundle the letters I had sent to Santa. They were all in this little bundle. And it's
and that happened to me. Same thing.
And it's like, wait, if the letters are still here, he didn't get and then it hits you. It's like, wait a minute, what happened, right? And then I set the house on fire, and that.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one I wish was. I really wish because when I had to tell my kids, that's a heartbreaker. I wish that Santa did exist because it's like it's much greater.
I love the story. I love the fact. It's one of the few fake media things that I love to this day, and the media won't wreck it for you, right? I will say there's some rules out there. One rule in particular, but you know it every year, and some really push it, which is so many news stations, local news stations have Santa radar, right?
Yeah.
And they do it at a specific time. Fairly early when the kids should be in bed, if you want them to get into bed so you can do all the tree stuff, and they warn you ahead of time so you can get the kids around the television. And of course, America took it too far. There was a few years ago where I think CNN did this animation, and they brought in the freaking Pentagon, and apparently Santa was getting escorted by F-16s, the whole 9 yards. They had this animation with this squadrons of fighters that it's like, of course America would hijack this.
Yeah.
So your favorite troll of the night, Sergeant Rock, has actually gone live. I'm looking at his channel.
Oh, cool. How many subs does he have?
I don't know, 648, but he's got this up and he's talking about us, and I think it's wonderful. For your trolls,
why not?
I just want to say, I don't believe what Mark believes, but I believe in having civil and decent conversation.
Yeah.
So,
And again,
and it's fun.
It is. And what I try to tell people is like, look, one of your, and I'm stealing from a movie here. One of your only freedoms that you have out there is figuring out things for yourself, and deciding for yourself. No, don't take everything that's out there, that's put out there at face value. I know that the Truman Show line is very, very true, which is we believe that what the world is presenting to us, and the media. Don't forget, the media is controlled by parent companies, which are controlled by bigger parent companies. And they have an agenda. The objective media, I don't know if it's ever really existed. So just because you see something or hear something, do your own research, ask questions. Don't believe
I agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you've done all the research. We've talked about that before. Obviously, you feel that you're right.
I do.
You mentioned 2015. Is that when it sunk in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I looked into it. I love pop culture references. I looked at it in 2014, and tried to debunk it for 9 months. Everybody tries to debunk it. The T-shirt literally reads, "I became a flat earther because I tried to debunk it." If you try to debunk it, you're screwed, because you'll never get it out of your head. It'll be like a marble in a paint can. And at the beginning of 2015, I had that Jerry Maguire moment, sports movie, folks, where I woke up. For him, it was like, not more clients, less clients. And for me, it was like I woke up, it's like, wait a minute, I'm going about this all wrong. I shouldn't be trying to debunk it. I should let the internet do the work for me. So I'm going to say that it is, and I'm going to let the internet hive mind see if they can poke holes in it. But I'd been already trying to debunk it for 9 months, and so it was really like I was daring the internet to find an angle that I hadn't thought of, and I thought for sure. Honestly, I really thought, God is my witness, I thought some guy with a master's degree or PhD from university would call me up. It's like, okay, here's where you went wrong, blah blah blah. You didn't carry the 2 or whatever it is, and that's it. You can shut down your YouTube channel and be like, oh, thank God, I can go back to playing Warcraft. And and I thought that's how it would go, and it didn't. It went the other way, where all of a sudden all these people started coming out of the freaking woodwork. I mean, all subject matter experts, structural engineers and air traffic controllers, every branch in the military, pilots, you name it. Everybody that fired everything, by the way, that whole sniper thing. It's like, oh, took account of the curvature of the earth. No, I've talked to every master gunners and everybody in between, and they all say the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we've heard the curvature, we've heard the spin, we don't use it. And this just kept piling on each other to where within 6 months, by the time 2015 ended, I was like, oh no, I'm completely in. Any reservations I had left, I don't have. And again, most of it was, and then everyone started picking on NASA, and then it was pretty easy. So there you go.
Hey Mark, we've been at this for 2 hours now.
Yeah,
probably
if you
time
have any
to wrap it
lingering
up.
questions, you might want to.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on once again, man. Conversations are always fascinating. It's always fun.
Yeah.
You're a smart dude. You're respectful, and that's what I
Oh, I
really
know about
appreciate
that.
about you.
Well, thank you.
I
By
didn't
the
say
way,
anything about your looks. I wasn't going to go there.
Yeah, I know. By the way, I had to get used to the fact that people wanted to do stuff on camera. The first 50 interviews, I don't think I was on much video. I just don't like myself on camera. You hang out with enough field producers, for example, and you start to figure stuff out. They you know what the whole it factor is in various things. And like when every producer you run into says, "Yeah, wear a hat," it's like, "Yep." Wear a hat. My family.
I noticed too, this time you got the whole background going, which is
Well, and by the way, I didn't even build this. That's the other side. Not to go off on a quick little thing. If I ever live to write my autobiography, which I don't know if I will, because I don't know if it matters, because I've lived a weird, charmed life, it would be called Unsolicited, because people just started sending me stuff like this background. David Weiss made that because he didn't like the stuff I had done, like my previous thing. The whole reason like Jaronism made his channel, which was very successful, was because he watched my videos and he didn't like the video editing that I did. He goes, well, if this guy can make a successful channel, I certainly can. And he went to like the secondhand store, literally went to a thrift store and bought a worn out copy of Visual Studio 12 for like $6, went home and started making better videos than me.
It's
and
hilarious.
it's like and that sort of stuff happens all the time. And I never had to pick up a phone to do stuff. Like my publisher out in London, she calls me up and she goes, "Hey, you want to write a book on this?" I go, "Sure. What do I have to do?" She goes, "Well, send me the transcripts of the clues." I go, "Okay, sure." And I mean, other producers things don't work out, but I didn't have to. Or the Australian thing where they said, "How would you like to do a mobile commercial in Australia?" It's like, "Sure." Can you be here in 2 weeks? It's like, oh god. Yeah, sure, sure. Why not? I've never been to Australia before. Why the hell not? So
That's awesome.
yeah. So anyway, it's been a hell of a journey, but I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's been a lot of fun.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Ryan will agree with me, but I'd like to offer you an open invitation at any time you want to come on the show.
Thanks. We can talk about sports.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever, man.
It's got to be sports next time. We'll just talk about sports.
As long as you bring your trolls, we'll be okay.
Oh, good Lord, the trolls. Yeah,
we'll get more comments for sports probably. We'll get all kinds of negative. People yelling at me and my Chiefs winning.
Oh, don't start. This one of the, by the way, that reminds me of what was that commercial where the guy that draws the lines on the field, he did the chef, called it the chefs. Remember that commercial from years ago? And it was like, so it wasn't Chiefs in the end zone. He spelled it wrong. He left out the I, and it's like, it was
yeah.
And he goes, and the guy looks at the line guy, goes, "Who's the chefs?" And he looks down. He goes, "Great googly moogly."
Right.
The people were already gunning in the stands, and it was like, oh crap, I'm screwed.
Here's a guy who needs spell check.
Let me two things real fast. One is thank you to the troll that doesn't happen to me very often, where they're actually piggybacking off a stream that's happening, where there's a troll streaming a thing that I'm doing. So hey, great, good for you. The other thing is crap. Oh yeah, if you want to find me, you don't have to, just go. I'll make it easy for you. Just go into any search engine, type in Flat Earth Mark. That's it, and you will eventually find the rabbit hole that leads to wherever. I believe in fate, so it's going to take you somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know where it's going to take you, but you'll find my stuff, and the community's so huge that if you're curious, if you guys are in it, and by the way, any trolls that want to visit our big event now that the mandates are all gone, our big conference is going to be in Las Vegas on October 21st and 22nd, and I am opening. So
Excellent.
How big is your group, Mark? Like,
oh, good Lord, man, it's huge. It's absolutely freaking huge.
Huge.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's millions of people. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. We have a massive number of people out there. But the problem is that 90% of them are in the closet. In fact, that's part of my speech for this year, which is all your top flat Earth channels, for example, are barely crack six figures on YouTube, right? But if you go into YouTube and you type in flat Earth and you sort by view count, every major channel in YouTube, except for like movie reactions, has done a flat Earth video because they know it generates hits. But so you've got it's this weird secret army that's out there because they're into flat Earth, but they don't want to admit it. And I'll give you the last thing before I go, which is I kind of equate it. And you guys are old enough to remember this. It's a little ripoff of Chris Rock joke, which is it's kind of like the Spice Girls. Which is Spice Girls is the most popular female band in the history of anything, right? I have yet to meet anyone that has owned the album, has ever played the album or have been at their house,
right.
And yet they have sold millions and millions of copies, and they had 2 blockbuster movies. So,
I actually knew a person that it was a guy too that had that album.
Really? See,
yeah,
you're one of the first people that it's like.
He also had what was the other band? Not New Kids on the Block.
Instinct.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Backdoor Boys.
Backstreet Boys. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was that guy.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
Said that.
Yeah. The boy bands And by the way, all the boy bands stole from Menudo. The Mexican.
Oh, right, hell yeah, they did.
Remember Menudo?
Yeah. They figured out that formula. That was genius. By the way, the American producers is like, oh my God, we get a boy of every bad boy type you could imagine, clean cut and bad, dirty and bad, and we put them all on stage, and the girls are going to be drawn to one of them, so they're all going to buy the album, they're all going to go to the concerts. Brilliant.
Did you watch that documentary on HBO?
On Menudo?
Yeah.
Oh no, I want to though.
There's a good documentary on it. It's pretty interesting because Yeah, it covers it pretty deeply, and it kind of explains what you were talking about.
Yeah, America again. We steal only the best stuff.
We sure do.
Right.
We do.
That's
We
right.
make it ours. We invented all that crap. Whatever.
Mark, once again, dude, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure. It's
Appreciate
been
it.
fun. And let's do it again sometime.
All right, man. Thank you. Send me the audio when you
Thanks a
can. Hey, buy what was his name? SGT what? Sergeant what?
Sergeant Rock.
Sergeant Rock. Oh my God. I shouldn't make fun because Sergeant Rock was one of my early favorite comic books. Whatever.
Yeah.
I also own a comic book shop back in the day. So Sergeant Rock, hey, great name.
Hey, well, since you brought that up,
Yeah.
what is your take on the new comic book movies falling apart? Like the big
It was going to
slump
run
thing?
it. It was going to run its course. In fact, if you want, not to draw this out. If you want to watch, my opinion mirrors the opinion of a wonderful movie reviewer called The Critical Drinker.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
From Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
His last thing that he did, which was basically said the end of hero movies, which he goes into it, and it's a number of factors, but really the short version is it's run its course. We've done it. We've done everything in the comic book world that we could possibly do. And what we didn't do in the movie industry, we did with The Boys. The Amazon series, which he goes in. There's a whole bunch of books I could talk about that one, which is really delves into the real superhero aspect of it, which is
that's a good show, right? Do you like that show? I mean, as a
with The Boys.
yeah,
Well, remember, I'm a big comic book fan, so
Right.
I came from the world where there was books like Stormwatch and Planetary and The Authority, where superheroes weren't nice. They weren't. I mean, when power corrupts and with superheroes, there was a wonderful story. Again, last thing, I swear to God, look up if you want to look up The Authority or Planetary, wonderful books, where there was a story where basically the first superhero group that shows up wins. And then one of the universes, the Fantastic Four, showed up first. They were the ones, and they made sure any other superhero that showed up dead.
okay.
They ran everything at the highest level,
right?
and they killed Superman in his crib. They wiped out Wonder Woman's island. Batman. The Flash. They dissected and stole his powers. I mean, there's a ruthlessness to it. There's a naive sense in comic books, which is, Batman sent him to jail. Right.
Yeah,
And he never used guns, and Superman never used his his heat vision, and incinerated people. Right. It's like, no, that's not really how it would go. So the Boys is it really gritty and really, it's not for everybody. No, it's not.
Have you seen it, Andy? The Boys?
I stopped watching it when I saw the dude crawl up the other dude's penis and explode.
Oh yeah, you know what part of that was? Unfortunately, that was part that Seth Rogen was a producer of that show, where you could tell he was sitting in on some meetings, like, it would be great.
You know what? I want to offer you something.
Yeah.
Let's get you on the podcast next time, and let's not talk any flat Earth. Let's talk comics. Let's talk sports. Let's talk whatever. Mark Sargent.
All right, I'm out of here. Go away.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.